Give me a little intro there, Gomer.
There's no turning back now.
Let's put on the show.
You're listening to episode 49 of the Station 71 podcast. My name is Mario, and this week I'm joined by my co-hosts,
Beth?
Brian.
And Kirsten.
So this week we are going to be continuing our Disney animation tour, picking up with the Renaissance where we left off last week, and kind of diving out or fleshing out the rest of these Disney movies. But first, as always, we're going to talk about the news. So I'm going to turn that over to you guys since I was horrible and did not read the news topics again this week.
So our first news story is that FastPass Plus are no longer going to be able to be transferred between guests. I saw this news article and didn't understand it at all, so Beth can explain this way better than I can.
So basically what was happening is cast members can book fast passes up to 30 days in advance, and what they were doing was going ahead and booking stuff, and then from my understanding, whenever like their friends or their family or whoever was like bought their tickets and they linked together on My Disney Experience, then they would transfer the fast passes over. So they were essentially like reserving fast passes for people that didn't have tickets yet. So Disney has put a stop to that. So if you go on My Disney Experience, there used to be a button that said change party. Now you only have the option to remove people from your party or add people to your party if the availability is there. So I don't really see the difference at this point other than the fact that when you transferred it, it was like a guarantee, like as long as you were giving up one spot, you could give it to somebody, and they definitely got the fast pass, and now it's kind of like you got to be really quick about it, I guess. So I don't really see how this is going to solve a whole lot of problems. So, but I don't think any of us are going to be super duper affected by this, so that's good at least.
Yeah, I didn't even realize that you could do that, so...
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know this was a thing until we started talking about it.
Yeah. People trying to game the system. Sometimes it's smart, and then Disney catches on.
Yep.
But...
Let's see. So our next story is there is new pass holder exclusive Haunted Mansion merchandise coming to Magic Kingdom, and there are looks like three main things that they're adding. There is a limited release plushie. It's kind of a set that includes the Hatbox Ghost and a bat. Let's see, that's selling for $49.99. There is a Haunted Mansion wooden tray. It looks kind of like a serving tray for $39.99. And then there's two new t-shirts. It looks like a women's and I guess a unisex one with Haunted Mansion and pass holder on it. So it's almost Halloween according to Disney.
I'm just happy we're getting a lot of Haunted Mansion merch. Like,
see, that's kind of where I'm at. It's like I'm never going to say no to Haunted Mansion merch, but the way that the shirts read to me is that I'm a pass holder for the Haunted Mansion, which I guess is not completely wrong. It just kind of feels weird.
I mean, I would buy an annual pass for that. Like,
Yeah.
let's be real.
I know the room that I record in, I'm trying to complete like the Disney theme, and every time we go to the parks to get stuff, I'm always just like, oh, look, more Haunted Mansion stuff. And my wife's kind of like, you kind of need to do other stuff too, or just decide to do it all Haunted Mansion.
No, you don't.
You know?
You don't need anything other than Haunted Mansion. That's all you need. That's the only attraction in the Disney parks.
So, do you see yourself buying any of the stuff you see so far, Brian?
I like the shirt. I don't really know what I would do with the serving tray. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
that's-
obviously meant to be
yeah.
like just displayed. I don't think you're actually supposed to. Who uses a serving tray anymore? First of all,
Right.
but the I don't know. The plushie's kind of cool, but at the same time, $50 is a little bit steep. I mean, I know you'll get the pass holder discount on top of it, but that's kind of hard for me to justify.
Yeah.
Let me ask you guys a question, because this is something that I often kind of like debate with myself in my head. How do you guys feel about the Hatbox Ghost being on Walt Disney World merchandise with the animatronic not being in our mansion?
Yeah. I was just about to say that the same thing is I think it's weird that they're selling Hatbox Ghost merchandise at Disney World.
I'm just really surprised that they haven't included it in the attraction because, I love it just because of all the history behind it, even, not ever having been to Disneyland. But I think it would be a really good addition and a pretty easy one to add into the Haunted Mansion in Disney World.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's not like a crazy hard effect to achieve, at least now, obviously. It was back then, but yeah, I think it would be cool if they brought the Hatbox Ghost over here, but I feel like there's probably a lot of people who go to the parks and they're like, oh, it's just a ghost.
Mm-hmm. Or they think it's one of the hitchhiking ghosts or something.
Right. They don't know the backstory.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and see, that's the funny thing to me. Like, I know that the ghost has a lot of history in Disneyland, but like, it's so weird that a lot of the merchandise they release has Hatbox Ghost on it. Like, even not just this stuff, but looking back at other Haunted Mansion memorabilia, it's usually included in there somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And
I mean, it's on the pass holder T-shirt here too.
yeah, it's
Right.
just so weird that
like, what?
they like really push the Hatbox Ghost in our park, but I don't know.
See, I feel like maybe it could possibly be their way of gauging interest in it, but at the same time, a casual park goer is not going to look into that. They're not going to Google who's this character of this plush, so they're not going to have the resources, I guess, available to, gauge the interest properly.
Yeah. I also think, the big thing about the Haunted Mansion and, in Disney World is that I guess outside of Madame Leota, there's not like one really like main character to the attraction or one that's used for advertisement or merchandise and stuff like the Hatbox is.
They kind of use all of them though, because I've seen merchandise with the bride on it. I've seen the hitchhiking ghost on a lot of stuff. Like, I feel like that's so true that he's more of like an iconic character, kind of in the way that like Figment is for A Journey into Imagination. But it's weird that like they don't make use of him. But I guess that's kind of a trend for our parks, right?
Yeah.
It's like how last Christmas they didn't do Jingle Cruise at Disneyland, but they still had that mug that you could buy.
Oh
y'all
yeah.
remember
I forgot
that?
about that.
It's like, why do you do this? Why don't you just give the Hatbox Ghost stuff to Disneyland and give us the Jingle Cruise? Like, why did they make those decisions? Or was it an accident? Who knows?
Yeah, but at least the Jingle Cruise can come back. But
True. That's very true. But I was just like, these are weird marketing decisions they're making.
yeah.
And I forgot we had one more news article. So for our last one, construction is set to begin on the Tron coaster that's coming to Tomorrowland, which is cool. What is also cool is that is going to mean a temporary closure of the Tomorrowland Speedway, and unfortunately means that the Walt Disney World Railroad will also be temporarily closed during the construction.
Yeah. I say just don't reopen the Speedway. Just keep it closed.
Hear, hear.
That'd be just so much of an improvement to Tomorrowland to not have to smell the fumes of the past in Tomorrowland.
it still blows my mind that they decided to like shoehorn this attraction into an already kind of cramped Tomorrowland and not take out the Speedway when they did this.
Yeah, I don't understand why they are only closing the Speedway for like a section of 2019, but the railroad's going to be closed for almost a year. Like, why aren't they closing both at the same time, or like, you know, what's the difference?
I haven't looked at the maps in a while, but isn't part of the coaster going to be on kind of like the other side of the railroad? I'm wondering if they're just doing that so that guests can't see what's going on with the construction.
Oh, that's a
Well, then
good
they
point.
should make it to where you can't see the construction at Galaxy's Edge. I mean, they should at least be consistent about what's a good show and what's bad show.
Yeah,
That's
definitely.
true. I think they care a lot more about how Magic Kingdom looks than Hollywood Studios, though.
Yeah.
Not that it's right, but I think that's pretty apparent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like Magic Kingdom is the baby and Hollywood Studios is the redheaded stepchild.
Ooh. So are we ready to dive into the rest of our animated movie tour?
Let's
Yeah.
do it.
Cool. So this week we are going to start our tour off with the Disney Renaissance, which I know we're all super excited about because this is probably the most exciting point in Disney history.
Best era ever.
By the way, Kirsten, I have to say, I was telling them a couple seconds before we started the show, while you were getting set up, I watched your documentary, Waking Sleeping Beauty, that you have been telling us for the last, 2 weeks to watch, and oh my gosh, I was blown away. That was so good.
I know. I was worried. I was like, is he gonna say that he hated it? Because that would be.
Oh.
I loved it. I thought it was so good and well worth the $3 that I spent to rent it. So yeah, definitely. I'm gonna let you take over all of this because you wrote the most notes down here. But I have to say before we go into this, if anybody hasn't seen Waking Sleeping Beauty, 100% recommend. Please go watch it. It was so good.
It really is. It's one of my favorites, and it makes me cry every time, especially when they get to the Howard Ashman.
Yep, I teared up there too.
Anyway, so I'm trying to think about where we left off. Disney Renaissance, so this is starting in around 1989. And so Peter Schneider was still a big guy in Disney. Don Bluth had already left. And last week when we left off, we were talking about the gong shows and how an example of a movie that got gonged a few times before it got approved was Little Mermaid. So in the process of starting some of these, David Geffen, who is a music producer, he's pretty famous. People might have heard of him. I don't know. He's actually a close friend of Cher's. He called Peter Schneider and told him about a musical team that he should talk to do music on some of the animated movies, and that team was Howard Ashman and Alan Menken. And so if you've ever, they did The Little Mermaid, they did Beauty and the Beast. Alan Menken has continued to do things, more recently. But they're like the Sherman Brothers of the Disney Renaissance, basically, is how I would describe them.
Absolutely.
Anyway, and this is Will's favorite part in the whole documentary is when they're talking about making The Little Mermaid. And so when they first started it, Sebastian was written kind of as he is now, like a crusty old crab who keeps Ariel in line. But Howard Ashman in a meeting was like, let's make him Jamaican. And so that's how they did it, which is really funny. And I feel like Sebastian wouldn't be who he is if he wasn't Jamaican. And then another interesting thing about The Little Mermaid is they did a test viewing for a test audience, and the audience did not like Part of Your World. And so Jeffrey Katzenberg wanted to cut the song, and he pushed so hard until finally the primary animator for Ariel drew up some scenes and showed them to him and convinced him to not cut the song, which is also, you can't imagine The Little Mermaid without Part of Your World, especially if you were a 5-year-old girl watching that movie.
I mean, it's crazy. It's one of the best Disney songs ever, I think, and that it almost got cut out of the movie is just insane to me.
Can you guys just imagine not like going up on the side of the pool and pretending to be Ariel when you were a kid?
And so this is around the time that they decided they wanted to start investing in computer animated post-production. And I think we said last week that this is actually why John Lasseter got fired from Disney the first time around, is he was really pushing this. And they eventually ended up going to the company that he had gone to, Pixar. So that was kind of the beginning of that whole relationship way back when. And then some interesting things about Beauty and the Beast. Belle, whenever they started working on it, Belle actually had a wicked stepmother, and it didn't work. And they had done a ton of work on it already, and so they had to scrap the first 20 minutes of the movie and start all over. And if you have a new version of Beauty and the Beast, there are some scenes. I don't know exactly what edition mine is, if it's like platinum or whatever, but there are some scenes that show, what the movie would have been like with the wicked stepmother angle, and so it's pretty interesting to watch.
That is really interesting. I think when you say they had to scrap the first 20 minutes of the film, it doesn't sound like a lot, but if you think about that in animation time,
yeah,
like that was probably pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, a ton of work. And that's also kind of a thing that changed when Jeffrey Katzenberg came into the scene, because he had only worked, as far as I know, on like live action stuff before that. And so he would say, like, how do you edit these movies down? And the animators were like, you don't edit them down. And he's like, well, we're going to. And he would just, cut the strips of film.
God, that's so weird.
Yeah. And so also after The Little Mermaid, Howard Ashman really wanted to go work on Aladdin, but Jeffrey Katzenberg said no and sent him to work on this film they were having trouble with, which was Beauty and the Beast. So Howard Ashman and Alan Menken did the music for Beauty and the Beast, and Howard Ashman had AIDS, and he actually died before Beauty and the Beast was released. He died March 14th, 1991. And he never got to see the film completed. And they did show an incomplete version at the New York Film Festival very shortly before he died, and it got a standing ovation. And so all the, his close friends that were working on the movie went to his hospital bed.
Like immediately after they went, or after they went on.
Yeah, they went from the festival to the hospital to see him, and tell him how much everybody loved it, and he said, and I can't remember who's talking in Waking Sleeping Beauty when they said said to Howard before they left, who would have thought? And Howard said, I would have, so like
that made me tear up. I'm not even gonna lie. Like that whole section got me really emotional in the documentary.
Yeah, it's definitely like the best part of, it's like the saddest part, but it's also just so like bittersweet to hear about it.
And it makes you realize that like all of these people that worked on a lot of the animated movies of this era, or really any Disney animated movie, they put so much into it. And I think that's one of the things that makes it super special, is you hear these stories about the people that put their like heart and soul into it and really truly believed in this movie, and that makes it just even more special.
Yeah. And then shortly after Beauty and the Beast, they were working on Pocahontas and The Lion King. And so in this big meeting with all the animators for Pocahontas and Lion King, or all the people working on it, Jeffrey Katzenberg came in and was talking about how much he loved Pocahontas. It was going to be a huge hit, and they get all this like stellar, talking about Pocahontas, and then was like, and then there's The Lion King. We don't know how it's going to work, whatever. And so nobody wanted to work on The Lion King, and nobody really believed in it, which is crazy, because I would say Lion King is much more popular than Pocahontas.
Oh, absolutely.
By far.
Yeah.
And it's just another reason that Jeffrey Katzenberg sucks.
Well, if you think about it this way, like, look at how Lion King has stood the test of time, with how many sequels or spin-offs and things after it. And, not even just that, like there's the Broadway musical and all that, and Pocahontas has one direct to DVD sequel that we're not even going to talk about.
Okay, to play devil's advocate though, like with the plot line of Pocahontas, how do you work off of that?
You don't. You just
Yeah, you just let it live.
Yeah. I feel personally very connected to Pocahontas because I am a registered Native American, so I feel that, but that's just me.
I'm not Native American, but I'm super nerdy about nature, so I also connect with Pocahontas for that reason. So
Yeah.
no hating on Pocahontas.
And then somebody we haven't talked about a lot, but had a huge part in the Disney company was Frank Wells. I believe he was COO, but he was definitely the peacemaker, especially between Michael Eisner and Jeffrey Katzenberg. And he was a big adventurer. He liked to climb mountains and go heli-skiing and all this stuff. And so he died Easter Sunday, 1994, and he actually died in a helicopter crash. And so whenever he died, there automatically was just a lot more tension. And right after he died, Jeffrey Katzenberg started really lobbying for his job. And Michael Eisner was not really interested in moving him to that role so soon. And Jeffrey Katzenberg just wouldn't let up. And so he actually resigned right after The Lion King opened. And he went on to found DreamWorks, because if you know the actual company name, it's DreamWorks SKG, and so it's Spielberg, Katzenberg, Geffen. So Steven Spielberg, Jeffrey Katzenberg, David Geffen. And another book to read if you're interested in not so much the animation, but it has a lot to do with just the company as a whole during this time period, is Disney War. It's very in-depth, but you learn a lot about just basically from the, I would say, mid-'80s to late 90s about the company as a whole, not even just the parks or just the movies, but the whole thing. And right after I read that, and I decided to hate Jeffrey Katzenberg so much, I have not seen a DreamWorks movie since that because I refuse to give him any money. And he just left the company, and I guess I don't think he has any stock or anything anymore. So I can finally watch DreamWorks movies now.
You're not missing
this is how much I hate
lot.
Jeffrey Katzenberg. I've never seen How to Train Your Dragon or any of that stuff because DreamWorks made it. And I
mean, realistically, other than How to Train Your Dragon, the only DreamWorks film worth watching is The Rise of the Guardians.
Well, they've done live action ones too, like the one with Tom Hanks. It was a few years ago, and it's about him being it's something about World War II, and there's a spy in prison, and I don't know, it was really good. So I heard, but anyway, so there's some others that I've wanted to watch, but
I'm impressed with your resolve there, Kirsten.
Hey, when I decide something, I'm stuck to it.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly did not know that you hated him that much.
Oh, yes. I mean, I guess if I really wanted to express my hatred of Michael Eisner and Bob Iger, I wouldn't go to the parks, but that's just too much.
Yeah, I don't think I could do that.
You gotta compromise somewhere.
So, before we dive into the next era, I pulled up the list of who has not seen what movies, and I was really excited to be like, wow, I can't believe you haven't seen this movie. But all of us have seen the important ones, so...
Wait,
Except
who hasn't...
movies who aren't on the list,
Which...
Okay, those don't count.
What do you mean, Mario? Brian and Kirsten, neither of them have seen Beauty and the Beast, The Enchanted Christmas.
Ryan hasn't seen Meet the Robinsons.
But that's not this era.
Hey, we're not there yet, okay?
The next part is where we can start ripping people a new one. I mean, Kirsten hasn't seen The Rescuers Down Under, but...
Yeah, I know.
I
I
would
haven't
say
seen
it's...
The Nightmare Before Christmas.
Yeah, I saw that, but I don't know. I mean, I enjoy that movie, but I can understand why you haven't seen it.
Yeah.
So I mean, this is the era that we all like grew up with. So are there any movies that like have really stuck with you from childhood up until now, and like for any particular reason or anything?
Typical girl, Beauty and the Beast. I like relate so hard to Belle because I moved to this tiny stupid town in Arkansas and like didn't have any friends and everybody was like, I don't know, a redneck, and like I read all the time because that's all I've ever done is read. So yes, I totally love Belle. She's my favorite.
Yeah. I love all the movies. Like, I think this is probably the only era that I would say that I like legit love every single, like very passionately love every single release, like at least the feature films. I'm not gonna say that for the sequels and stuff, but kind of like what I was saying earlier, like Pocahontas has always been the thing that stuck with me, mostly because of how nerdy I am about nature and conservation, as I'm sure everybody knows from previous episodes, but also just, I don't know, the fact that she's living in this society where she's expected to do the traditional, like, conventional thing, and she wants to, like, make her own path, and that's kind of always something that I've always related to.
Well, I mean, I have a lot of, I don't know, I have a lot of ties to a lot of these movies. Like you guys said, we grew up with these movies, and I remember, like, watching The Lion King so many times that we broke the VHS tape and stuff like that. Like, I feel like that's maybe, like we were saying last week, a lot of the reason that Disney has a lot of staying power is nostalgia. But I feel like it's a lot more than that with these movies. Like, they're such good movies, even by themselves, that they definitely stand the test of time more so than other ones.
They definitely do. And I do remember being little and going to see The Lion King, and it was the first movie that I'd ever seen at a movie theater. Like, I vividly remember getting out of the car and like being super excited, and I don't know, that's like my first memory, I guess, of Disney really was going to see that in the theater.
Nice.
Cool. See, okay, so for me, it was always like Aladdin and The Lion King were the two big ones that I loved, and like still two of my all-time favorite Disney movies. I always feel kind of conflicted that Tarzan is included in this era. I'm not a big fan of it. I still like it, but I don't think it's really like on the same level as most of the other Renaissance movies are.
I like the music a lot, but the movie I haven't seen, and I have no idea how long.
Really, I'm not a big Phil Collins fan, so maybe that's
God,
just me.
what is wrong with you? Jeez.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you on, like, in the fact that I think it's the weakest of this era for the feature films, but I love Tarzan. I love the soundtrack, and I cry like a baby every time I watch this movie. So I still think it holds up, but to each their own.
Well, here's the funny thing. Like, I know I've voiced my opinion on Tarzan, I think, a couple times. Like, I don't love it, but I don't hate it, and I have a lot of weird, like, reasons that I don't love it and don't hate it. Like, the one thing that I really remember about Tarzan is I know I saw it in theaters, but at the same time, I remember that when I was younger, my parents made me go to this summer camp thing, and it was, we always ended up watching Tarzan. Like, I swear we watched it at least twice a week, and for that reason, I also don't like it. And then on top of that, we've talked about Kingdom Hearts on here a couple times, and I think I've said on here that when I first got my PlayStation 2, my parents didn't know you needed a memory card, and me not having any kind of self-control had to play the same, like, 3 levels over and over again. So if you ever ask me to play any part of Kingdom Hearts, I can beat Destiny Islands, Traverse Town, and all of Deep Jungle with probably my eyes closed.
And Deep Jungle is like the worst. Oh my god.
Yeah, so, like, that's probably a reason that I don't have a huge attachment for it, but I really enjoy the music in this movie.
Yeah. Before we move on to the next era, I want to ask you guys what you think about the controversy with The Lion King and Kimba the White Lion. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I know nothing about this.
I saw about or saw a thing about it. I have never seen Kimba the White Lion, but the fact that the creator of that one kind of said that he didn't think Disney stole it from him, I don't know.
I mean, The Lion King was based on Hamlet anyway.
Right.
And that's like a well-known fact that Jeffrey Katzenberg wanted to do like Hamlet with lions. So, I mean, I don't know. I get that there can be some similarities, but I don't think that it was intentional. And I think that the fact that it's already based on another work, like, how do we know? Did Kimba the White Lion come from? Was that inspired by Hamlet at all? Like, I don't know.
Well, from what I understand, like, the storyline isn't really similar, but it's like some of the like animation scenes lined up pretty closely, like, and obviously Kimba and Simba being the characters, like, that's kind of weird too. And there's like a couple of other things, like some of the characters seemed to be like super similar in both of these. So I definitely don't think that the storyline was, if something was stolen, I don't think it was the storyline. Obviously, like you said, Lion King is based on Hamlet. Again, I haven't seen Kimba the White Lion, so I don't know for sure, but I think it's possible that, you know, some of the animation scenes are pretty similar.
I have to cut out because my child is like shrieking. I think he's turning into a werewolf. Anyway, Mario, you can cut this or just leave it right here. I don't care. But the last thing I want to say is not from this era. It's from 2010 to present, the revival era. It's about Tangled. And everybody needs to know that Mother Gothel's physical appearance was based on none other than 80s Cher.
So before you duck out,
Yeah.
just last week, a photo from, I guess it was from like Mamma Mia 2 or something, rotated around my Twitter, and it was Cher with the one girl that's in that movie, and the caption on the picture that kept like spiraling around my Twitter feed was Tangled 2018, and so many people were actually believing that Cher was going to be starring in a live action Tangled movie, and I really wanted to send that to you, but I was like, she's probably seen it.
I saw that because my friend tagged me, and I was like, you realize that like it's well known that Cher was the inspiration for Mother Gothel, right? Like, this isn't new, and you know, but anyway.
I did not actually know that, so.
Well, anybody who talks to me, and like, clearly Cher is becoming more and more part of this podcast. So that's intentional.
So with that, I guess that brings us up to the post-Renaissance, which, hold on, I have to back this up because there are a couple movies that we didn't talk about here, and I just realized that. So the Disney Renaissance, it's considered to include The Little Mermaid, The Rescuers Down Under, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, The Lion King, Pocahontas, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, Hercules, Mulan, and Tarzan. Which we could probably do an entire episode on Disney Renaissance, because even the underrated movies like Hercules, which happens to be my favorite movie, is like just so
amazing,
good.
Yeah. I was actually going to talk about, like, before we moved on, I was like, I am obsessed with the muses in Hercules. Like, they are my, like, spirit animals. Like, I want to be them. I love the sass and the, like, cleverness and everything. So I didn't want them to go unnoticed either.
Yeah, I love it. I've always found Greek mythology really interesting, and I love the little, like, kind of snippets of stuff that Disney put into this movie for people that are kind of familiar with it.
So, I have a question for you guys, and it kind of pertains to this because I can do this with Hercules. Is there any movie in here that you have seen so many times that you know most of the script and words to, like, the songs for? Like,
oh, I mean, like, the songs for sure. I could probably sing every word of most of the songs from all of these films. But, like, the entire script with just, like, dialogue and stuff.
Or, like, just parts that you can walk into a room, hear, like, one line and be like, I know exactly what that is and where you're at.
Oh, yeah.
I would say I could do that with all of them except for The Rescuers Down Under.
So, funny story, like, 3 or 4 days ago, we walked into my girlfriend's parents' house, and her sister was watching Hercules, and it was right at the part where Hades walks into the room and he says, "I haven't seen this much love in a room since Narcissus discovered himself." And I literally walked into the room and heard like the music cue, and I looked at her and I said the line, and she was like, "You've seen this movie way too many times."
That's funny.
Also,
I want to throw in a fun fact. I don't know if I told you guys this or if you saw on my social media, but a few months ago, I actually had the opportunity to meet the voice of Sebastian because he is from my hometown, and he came back and they gave him a bunch of awards and stuff. His name is Samuel Wright, and he's absolutely incredible, and he did some a cappella, and then he also sang, like, accompanied by music, Kiss the Girl and Under the Sea, and it was absolutely incredible and also extremely weird to see this man singing and being Sebastian like in front of my face.
That's really cool. Kind of similarly to that, last Christmas, my mom bought us tickets to see Aladdin on Broadway, and I didn't know even like till well after this happened, and we had seen the play, we had gone outside, we had like waited by the stage doors and everything and met a couple people, including this person. The person that played Jafar was actually the voice of Jafar, and I didn't know that until like we got home and I was flipping through the playbill, and I was like, wait a second, there's no, okay, no, I totally see it now.
Wow. You were like, wow, this guy's really good.
I mean, I did.
That's funny.
So, do we want to move on to post-Renaissance?
Not really.
I just want to keep talking about it.
Let's just cut the podcast here. This is it. This is the end.
No, we can move on. I do want to ask you guys, as sort of a superlative, what would you say is your favorite movie from this era that is not a feature film? So like one of the sequels or like the off-brand
Wait.
Or not off-brand, but whatever.
Does a Goofy movie count?
Oh, definitely.
Because hands down, if it does, that's, I mean, right there.
Yeah,
that right there.
I would say absolutely.
As I'm saying this, I wore my Powerline shirt yesterday, so
I'm gonna go with The Lion King 2, Simba's Pride, always.
That's a good one. I think that's probably my favorite Disney animated sequel, but I gotta agree with Mario. Like, nothing tops a Goofy movie.
Yeah, I mean, a Goofy movie is super good. I agree.
Honestly, even if I can't go with that, Aladdin and the King of Thieves was really good, and I actually really enjoyed Enchanted Christmas. Both of those were really good. But if you guys, throwing this out here, if you guys have a box lunch store anywhere near you, they've been doing so many like Disney Renaissance and like post-Renaissance movie merchandise. Like, they did a lot of Hercules stuff recently. They've had a couple Goofy movie things. Actually, they've had a lot of Goofy movie stuff recently. And they did a couple Emperor's New Groove stuff, too. So even if you don't order it online, like, not that they need our little plug here, but I've been super into looking at all of their stuff.
Isn't it like a Hot Topic?
It's a subdivision of Hot Topic. Like, Hot Topic owns them and, like, 3 other companies. But this is where they kind of moved a lot of their... Because, like, Hot Topic was always supposed to be about music. Which it's kind of turned into a pop culture store, but this was more of their, like, geeky pop culture store. So...
Okay. God, I wish we had a box lunch store around here. We have Hot Topic, but not box lunch.
There's one about, like, 30 minutes away from me, and every time I go there... The one time we were there, they had this Hercules... It was, like, a basketball jersey, and... It was really cool.
That sounds
well, it was really cool because the word on the name on the jersey was hero and the number was 0. And
oh my gosh,
I was like, that's so great. And I thought about it, but like I don't wear tank tops, so my quote unquote fitness goal was to like feel comfortable wearing a tank top. And like once I finally hit that, I was like, I can go back and buy it, and now it's not there.
Oh no.
But yeah, so I just wanted to plug that and throw that in there because I might go back to have a we're gonna get to Emperor's New Groove, but they have a couple Emperor's New Groove stuff in there, and a lot of Goofy movie things that I've been looking at online recently.
Nice.
So, I guess we can talk post-Renaissance now. Which, it's funny that Brian says this, because I honestly think that Tarzan kind of is that weird line on Renaissance, post-Renaissance, because it's either love it or hate it. No one absolutely is, like, middle ground on Tarzan, I think. But really, after that, we kind of start to see Disney test the waters with some stuff they haven't done before. We go back into Fantasia 2000, which is basically a revival of Fantasia. It's the first kind of package style movie that we've seen in a while that's obviously the same as Fantasia. And it's funny because unlike other Disney classic follow-ups, this wasn't direct to video. This was like full-blown, big budget, everything that Walt would have really wanted in this film. However, it was not really a financial success, which kind of is the trend for this era of Disney movies.
Yeah. It's also the trend for the original Fantasia, funny enough.
I mean, I know I've seen Fantasia 2000, but I don't remember much of it. I remember more about Fantasia than I do Fantasia 2000.
Like, I remember more about Fantasia because I feel like those are so iconic. Like, most of those scenes, you know, the Sorcerer's Apprentice and Night on Bald Mountain and the Pastoral Symphony. So, like, everybody knows these. But I feel like Fantasia 2000 is really underrated because while I wouldn't say that any of the sequences are particularly iconic, the animation is super gorgeous. Like, the music, like, the way that it meshes with the music is super cool. And it has a bunch of really, like, I don't know, aesthetically pleasing sequences for, especially coming from just like an arts perspective. So I would recommend if you like Fantasia, definitely watch it. I would also say if you like art in general, just watch it.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to revisit that one.
I had to watch it for a class in college. It was like I had to take a painting or a drawing class. I can't remember which one.
You say had to, like it's a bad thing.
Well, no, like I got to. So it was pretty cool. Like one of like the assignment was to like draw inspiration from one of the sequences and like make a, you know, painting or whatever based on that, and it was pretty cool. So that's probably part of the reason that I'm super into it.
So after that, we had the follow-up of the almost fully CG dinosaur, which it was almost fully CG as all the characters were completely CG rendered, and it actually used live-action backgrounds, which I didn't know until I started researching for this, because I honestly don't remember Dinosaur at all. It was definitely...
Oh, I love it.
I know I've seen it, don't remember any parts of it.
See, I think that the criticism it gets is that I hear most often is the animation is beautiful, but the storyline sucks. But I don't think the storyline sucks. I think it's overall a pretty good film with just particularly beautiful animation.
The criticism I've heard that's similar to that is that it already takes too much from a lot of other Disney movies. Like, it utilizes a lot of the same themes, but there's so many Disney movies that do that.
Right. So you can't judge one. That's cherry picking.
So
you're just looking for a reason to not like it at that point.
So what about this movie do you just love all of it, or is there something like specific that really like makes you actually love Dinosaur as much as you do?
Well, I have like a really soft spot for like how Aladar forms this bond with these lemurs, and that scene at the beginning where like everyone in his family like dies, and then like a bunch of the lemur family dies, and there's that one that hadn't had a chance to fall in love yet, and it just touches my like sensitivities like in every way that like I would say especially like the first like 30 minutes of the film. But I just think it's I think it's a great film. I think that they did really good with character development because they really made me dislike the villains, and Aladar is obviously the protagonist here. Like, you're rooting for him, but at the same time, he's like this really great, like, genuine character who just wants to help everybody get to the watering hole, even if they're being a jerk.
Mm-hmm.
So it's got a good moral to it.
Yeah. And you know, I like it. It's definitely not one of my favorite Disney movies. And even though it was, you know, somewhat financially successful, I kind of wish it was more so, because I would love to see Disney continue to do this kind of CGI animation overlaid with real, you know, real life backgrounds, and see what they could do with that technology nowadays. But I feel like they're not going to try to touch that again, at least not in the same way they did with Dinosaur.
Yeah, I don't think we'll see anything like that. Now, tying it back to the parks, Disney relied so much on this that they actually changed Countdown to Extinction to the dinosaur we know today, which I don't think that there's like how much movie reference is actually in that movie besides the iguanodon.
The Carnotaurus, that's it. Like, literally, then the Carnotaurus was already in Countdown to Extinction, so that was just either they specifically put the Carnotaurus in Dinosaur the movie to, like, tie into that, like, that was their plan all along, or it was just, like, a happy coincidence. But, like, they don't even reference the fact that the iguanodon is supposed to be Aladar, so I feel like it's like extremely loosely tied to the film.
Right.
So
I would actually like it a lot. Like, I would like it a lot if they not, you know, I don't want to make it cheesy to a point where it's like shoving it in your face that it, you know, they're referencing Dinosaur the film, but I think it'd be cool if they had incorporated a little bit more.
Well, I can't remember writing this before they changed it. Obviously, it was a long time ago, and it wasn't, you know, Countdown to Extinction for very long. But was the plot line still the same? Were we still going back in time to rescue the iguanodon?
Yeah, it was exactly the same plot.
Okay.
I don't think it was an iguanodon, though, was it?
Yeah, I don't remember, like, why we were going back in time, but everything from, like, the fact that you're going back in time, and then the meteor shower happens, and you're, like, trying to get out before you die, basically. Like, all of that was the same. But I would be interested to do a little more research on that and see what exactly changed with the film. I know that the statue in front used to not be an iguanodon, so it's possible that it wasn't in the ride.
I wonder if there's like Easter eggs and stuff to this movie that we're like totally missing.
Yeah.
I'm sure there probably is, because, you know, it's Disney and they do stuff like that all the time. We'll have to do some research on that one.
I just looked it up real quick, and it says that it's always been an iguanodon and a Carnotaurus.
Oh.
So I'm thinking that they maybe
it was
like,
just the name?
incorporated that on purpose, because it's like the figures look exactly like the characters in the film. So.
Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting. So after that, we had one of the successes of, actually, to backtrack a little bit, I didn't even say this, but even though it wasn't considered a success, Dinosaur actually managed to make back 3 times its budget. Even though
it was a financial success, I just don't think it was a success like critically.
That's exactly what it was. The critical reviews were mixed, and like you said, Beth, the audiences mostly agreed that the film was visually stunning, but the story fell flat. So
wrong.
So I think that's interesting that it made so much money back, because this is like one of the first few times that it's been the opposite. Usually it's a financial failure but a critical success. So interesting. But after that, we've got Emperor's New Groove, which the big shake-up here in the Disney formula was that this movie was entirely a comedy, and it never really took itself too seriously, which I think actually worked really well for this movie. This is probably one of my favorites from this era.
Oh, definitely.
So
Yeah.
the funny thing about this was it wasn't an immediate box office success. It did make back its investments, but basically, it kind of was like a gradual success. It even spawned a direct-to-video sequel, which is considered one of the better ones, in Krunk's New Groove. Have either of you
Is
guys
it?
seen that?
I haven't.
I've seen it. I would definitely not put it in the category of one of the best. I mean, it's not terrible, but it's basically like a bunch of pieced together stories.
Right. This article said it was one of the better ones. But I don't know if I agree
guess
that.
in this era, how many sequels were there?
Well, we
it
have a
looks like
list.
actually there were a few. Yeah, actually, I'm gonna take that back. If you put it in like a list of a bunch of Disney films, I wouldn't say it's one of the better sequels. But for this era, I would probably agree.
So, how do you guys feel about Emperor's New Groove? Because I feel like this is one of the absolute best ones from this era.
I love it. It's by far my favorite movie from this era. I think David Spade was perfect in this role.
Yeah, I think it's a really great film, and it has such a Cusco's development throughout the film is so good that you go from being annoyed by him and hating him to being he's funny and cool dude that grows up basically, and I like that.
I thought this was probably one of the best ones, and fun fact, this is one of the actual Disney movies that received a Disney Channel series after it, and I very vividly remember that. But yeah, anything else to touch on with that movie?
I think it's definitely the most quotable movie from this era.
I mean, no touchies.
Pull the lever.
Pull the lever, Kronk. Yeah.
I have been hearing the fact that, or not the fact, the idea to change, I guess, Rock and Roller Coaster or anything into a roller coaster based around that. And instead of doing the countdown, it's just pull the lever, Krunk, and that's what it shoots off. That would be so cool. I would love that.
That'd be amazing.
I think that
that
would be
one part right there sells it for me completely.
Yeah, instead of doing that 3, 2, 1 countdown, it would just be a slow load up to that point, and then you hear Yzma say, pull the lever, Krunk, and then it shoots you off, and as you go up, you hear her scream, wrong lever. That would just be... that would make the entire ride. I wouldn't care what the rest of it would look like.
You could walk into the Disney Parks boardroom and just be like, guys, Rocket and Roller Coaster, pull the lever, Kronk, and then just drop the mic and walk out, and I think that would get it changed over.
I mean, clearly not, because it's been all over the internet for the last couple of years.
They're just waiting for an official pitch, alright?
True. They don't want us to know that they actually read what we talk about.
So next D23, when that gets announced, I'm going to take all the credit, even though that was something I read probably on Reddit. So next movie we had, which is the best Disney movie, would be Lilo and Stitch. This is the most successful Disney movie of the post-Renaissance period. It was considered a critical hit. Even though the box office earnings were not as high as Dinosaur, it had a much smaller budget and ended up being more successful in the long run. Lilo and Stitch had, I knew it had sequels. I knew it had an animated series. I didn't know it had 2 video games. I thought there was maybe one, but not 2. And I didn't know that there was an anime based around Lilo and Stitch, which I may have to go find now.
That is...
I didn't know that either. That's wild.
Yeah, I kind of want to go back and look for that now, because I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah.
But fun fact, I want to say the backgrounds for Lilo and Stitch were done in Hollywood studios. I know part of this movie was done there when the animation building was still there.
Yeah, that's
I know we
cool.
kind of talked about that on our Hollywood Studios episode, but man, I think that's half the reason I love this park.
Yeah, I would love it a lot more if it still was relevant to animation and not Star Wars Launch Bay.
Yeah.
That was just like one of the coolest classes. I know I probably talked about this, or like one of the coolest attractions that you could just go in and be a terrible drawer and come out with a really cool thing that you drew because of the instruction that you got. And like a free souvenir. And that's probably why they shut it down. It's because they're like, we can't give anybody stuff for free.
Well, I also feel like
Star Wars.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of it, is that it's a shame because, as we're going to see once we hit the next era, Disney's really kind of gone away from 2D animation. Like, I don't think we're ever going to see another 2D animated Disney movie again.
I don't either.
Yeah,
and
I don't either, unfortunately.
Right, and that's super unfortunate because that's probably where a lot of the like fondness for Disney movies is remembered for us. And really having a park entirely about the movies and all that, that's not something that's really relevant anymore. So when you kind of mix those two things together, the fact that Disney really can't use that as an animator building, which, let's be real, I think that was the coolest thing. The fact that you could walk in and see an animator's desk right there and think like, wow, you know, what could they be doing next? Like, that was just so fascinating to me. But I think that that's probably a lot of the reason that Hollywood Studios is gone. Is because
It's gone.
like, what is it even now? Like, it's Toy Story Land.
It's dead to me.
Well, yeah. It's gonna be Star Wars and Toy Story Land, and
I'll acknowledge it when Star Wars comes.
Yeah.
But of course, as we kind of know through this post-Renaissance period, Disney never actually was able to maintain momentum with any kind of success, and that brings us to one of the most underrated Disney movies, as Brian found out this week. The animated reimagining of a science fiction version of Robert Louis Steven's Treasure Island in Treasure Planet.
I
So
love this
good.
movie. I can't believe I've gone this long without seeing it. It was...
Yeah, I can't either.
There's something so cool, and I think this is really why I love a lot of, like, the Muppet movies, but I love, like, having a familiar story being kind of, like, told in a different way, and this did such a good job at that.
My favorite part about this movie is how they were able to blend the 2D animation and the 3D animation in this movie. I think it's such a visually stunning movie, and I know that that's where it gets a lot of its praise from, but the story is incredible too. But just how beautiful this movie was, if Disney was able to do that, I feel like it would be so much less costly, and it would still bring that nostalgia of 2D animation that we all love back to the table.
Yeah, you know, that's a good point, because one thing that I thought about when I was watching this was not to, you know, say anything wrong about some of the Renaissance movies, because obviously they were really good and they were kind of dabbling with this technique. But I think some of the CGI techniques you see, like in Beauty and the Beast, when they go into the ballroom, you know, some of that, like, CGI is kind of jarring, or even like the Wildebeest Stampede in Lion King. Like, it kind of sticks out that, okay, you can see here's where they did the CGI right here, but Treasure Planet blended it extremely well, where it wasn't like, oh, there it is right there. You know, the whole thing kind of flowed together when they would do the CGI shots.
Yeah. I think there's just something that's, like, endearing about 2D animation, and I think that bringing it in, I don't know, like you guys said, with the nostalgia, but it also, I don't know, endearing is the only word that I can really think to properly describe what I'm thinking, but yeah, so I agree. I would love to see more 2D animation, you know, even if it's gonna be mixed in with the 3D CGI or whatever.
I also, like, I'm not gonna lie, this is another quotable movie for me. Like, and there's just that one scene that is so, like, I don't know if you guys are immediately knowing what I'm talking about, but the scene where Jim is talking to Silver, and he gives him the whole, like, the makings of greatness speech. Like, that is such a moving moment in this movie, and I don't know how that is not, like, considered one of the best Disney moments in any movie.
Yeah, that is good.
Because that, like, it hits all of those, like, classical heartstring moments. The only thing that I can actually complain about with this movie is I think Jim Hawkins as a character is kind of a little one note. Through a lot of the movie, he's very, like, teen angsty, and then all of a sudden he's a hero. So I think other than that, like, a lot of the characters other than him are really good. I like the style of animation. I love the story. Like, everything about this movie is just so good. And it's really funny that it's just not as good as it could be.
Well, I love Silver in this because I think he's one of the best, like, gray area characters I've seen. Like, he's toes that line between being, like, a good guy and a bad guy throughout the whole thing. And it's you don't often see that done very well.
Yeah, I totally agree. His, how he kind of takes Jim under his wing, and then, the feeling of betrayal, but then, they have this kind of mutual understanding at the end of, like, we're cool. Like, you did the nice thing. Like, you're a softie deep down inside. Is really cool.
Yeah, and that's kind of like what I was thinking, was, like, the entire thing with a lot of the characters is they all have their big things, and I think that may be one of the reasons why it's not so big. Like, there's no definitive villain in this movie aside from, that moment where Silver becomes the villain, but he's still even then in that gray area.
The actual villain is that creepy bug thing.
Well, yeah, that's true.
Unties Mr. Arrow's rope and blames it on Jim.
Yeah, that's true, but he's not in the movie enough for me to consider him the actual villain.
I guess so. And if we're talking realistically, the actual protagonist is Morph. Everyone loves Morph. Didn't you guys want one after you saw this? Because I did.
Yep.
So cute.
That'd be pretty cool.
Wait, did we talk about this before, that there was actual Treasure Planet characters in the Disney parks? Because I feel like maybe we did, and I don't know if we did or not.
I don't know if we did, but I knew this, and they were, like, all, like, furry characters, right?
Except for Jim,
like,
who's like...
Yeah.
He is...
Which is weird, because, like Doppler and Captain Amelia, like, they could have easily done, like, prosthetics and made them look like the characters.
Oh, I'm sorry. That would be terrifying to me. I'm so glad they didn't do that.
I think that would be awesome.
So the reason I bring this up is because, one, they were in Tomorrowland, which is a perfect fit, and if Disney really wanted to do anything with Tomorrowland, hint Treasure Planet. But I'm looking at the pictures of Ben and Jim, and they're mildly terrifying. And this picture also brought me to a Tumblr blog called scary-face-characters.tumblr.com. I'm gonna send you guys this because these are things I did not know that I didn't want to see.
Oh no.
So back on post-Renaissance talk. I actually just realized that I missed a chunk of what I was saying before about Treasure Planet. So,
side note, also, did we talk about it?
No, I was gonna call him out on it too, but I was waiting for a good point.
No. Hold on. My Atlantis notes are in here.
Yeah, but you skipped over them.
You did skip over them. I was like, did I miss him talking about that? Was I just distracted by the cat?
No, they're in with Treasure Planet, but
we weren't gonna let you get away with it, Mario.
No, I know. Actually, I know I saw the word Atlantis in here somewhere. But
it's
maybe
up. You have a whole section on it above.
You graded out for some reason.
Well, no, that's not even the section about Atlantis. Wow. Okay, I did skip over that. Call me out. Thanks, guys. So, backtracking a little bit, because I got really excited about Lilo and Stitch. I think that's what it was. After Emperor's New Groove, right before Lilo and Stitch, we have Atlantis, which I guess all of you guys are really thrilled about. And it was Disney's first kind of entry into science fiction. Atlantis was kind of neither here or there. Didn't bomb the box office, but it did have some stiff competition with Shrek coming out around the same time. So it really didn't make as much of a splash as it could have. It currently has a 49% on Rotten Tomatoes, and it is considered a cult classic. So, go ahead, talk about Atlantis.
I like it. I think it was very, very different. It did not feel very much at all like a Disney movie, which I know I mentioned before on something else last week, but I kind of liked that with this. It was the animation style I thought was really unique, and I don't know, I liked it. I thought it told a good story, and it was, you know, there were some parts that I was very surprised got put into a Disney movie, but either way, I liked it.
Yeah, this, going back to kind of what I was saying last week, the one of the guys is like smokes a cigar in this, does he not?
Yeah, and that's like a very prominent thing in his character, like drawing.
Right, it's like always hanging out of the side of his
And
mouth.
didn't someone get shot in this, if I recall correctly? Yeah.
Yes. Oh my God, I totally forgot about that.
There's also the guy that's obsessed with dynamite.
Mm-hmm.
So like,
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I totally agree with you, Brian. This does not really feel like a Disney film, but I like it at the same time.
yeah, this is a really underrated one, but I don't have anything else to
Plus,
say that you guys can
Kita's
say.
necklace, though, I remember wanting that necklace so bad.
So, I remember, and this is like just me feeling really dated about this because I know this isn't a thing that they do anymore. I remember back when I was younger and this movie came out, they had the little, like, the things you could cut off the bag of chips, and you could, like, redeem them online for prizes and stuff if you collected so many of them. Do you guys remember those kind of things?
Yeah.
Okay, so I
Yeah.
remember at one point, I think it was Lay's, because I remember eating a ton of Cheetos just to get this. I wanted to get.
Man, you really endured stuff.
I went through so much to get this, and I didn't even get it, and I'm still mad about it. But one
Oh
of
my God, what is it?
one of the prizes was
I need to know.
it was an interactive book of Atlantis. So, like, do you remember in the 90s where there were those, like, weird technology toys where you could, like, push buttons and it would tell you different things about stuff? Like the interactive Pokedexes they used to have.
Oh, yeah.
It was very similar to that, but it was a giant book. I'm going to see if I can find it. Because I remember this thing, and I'm, like, still to this day mad that I couldn't get it.
Oh my gosh, I would be too, man. You know, when you got those kinds of prizes as a little kid, I feel like whenever I got them, I was convinced. I was like, okay, well, I got this. Now I just got to find Atlantis. Like, because it's a real thing that I'm going to go find because I have the tools that I need.
You know, that makes me remember, I got, like, it was a CD-ROM. It was like a computer game that came on a CD-ROM that they put in a thing of cereal for Atlantis. And, like, they just don't do stuff like that anymore.
Isn't it funny how Disney did marketing like that before?
It's
Like, even
crazy.
the Game Boy Advance games, or you were talking last week about the Aladdin Genesis game.
Yeah. Which, by the way,
I
just
found a picture.
side note, yeah, I bought I've had the Aladdin Genesis game that I loved. I found the Lion King one at a local game store to me and bought it, and I made it to about the second level before I just absolutely rage quit and quit playing the game. It is so difficult and frustrating.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, the video game bar that I go to when I visit my best friend in Orlando that I've talked about on the show before has I think it was a Genesis game too, the Lion King one, or maybe it was multiple platforms, but either way, it was an old console, and he was there playing it one time, and he was just raging because this one part, he just couldn't jump right. Like, you had to jump so specifically, like, onto this part, and you had to time it perfectly, and I feel like there were so many instances of that. Like, it's a wonder that these games sold.
Yep. Okay, so I'm sending you guys this link to an eBay, or a site that I guess gives you the pricing of things. And tell me that you wouldn't be mad if you didn't get this.
Oh my God, yeah. Dang.
Like,
Oh,
still
that is
super
sweet.
salty about that.
Holy crap, that is cool.
I totally had something like similar idea, but it was Hello Kitty, and I would have probably much rather had this one.
I just like very vividly remember like getting just enough, and then as soon as I went to like go log in online and connect to the dial-up internet of the 90s, by the time my internet actually connected, it wasn't there, and I was so mad.
Man,
Like, I had watched this auction for like days and was super like excited that I was getting close, and then all of a sudden it was gone, and I was like, nope. But yeah, so I guess that's all I have to say about Atlantis.
yeah, I think that it's a really great film. I think that everyone should actively avoid watching the sequel. I honestly don't even know the storyline of the sequel. I got about 15 minutes in and the animation was so bad that I couldn't focus, and I was like, I can't watch this.
That's how most Disney sequels are, though. The Hunchback of Notre Dame sequel is so bad, and the animation just
Yeah.
does not do it. Like, it does not help at all.
Right, exactly.
So after that, we have Disney's Brother Bear, which was considered the spiritual successor to The Lion King and Tarzan, and is complete with Phil Collins' soundtrack. However, Brother Bear did not live up to its predecessors, and it made more money than Treasure Planet, but it's still, as this trend with the post-Renaissance films go, was not a critical hit and really didn't catch any momentum.
I feel like this is another one that gets a lot of hate, and I watched it. I mean, granted, I didn't watch it in its like heyday, like when it came out. I watched it well afterward, when I was just, like I told you guys, when I watched all of those sequels, I was just kind of going through the list of Disney movies I hadn't seen yet, and this was one of them. And I actually really liked it. Like, I think it had a lot of really like emotional moments, and I really like the idea of like spirit animals, and I think it's a cool concept, but apparently it was not very well received, so I'm in the minority here.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't hate it, but it's also like I can see why it falls in the trend of, not successors.
Yeah, it was just kind of meh
Yeah.
to me. It wasn't awful or anything, but it just didn't grab me like a lot of Disney movies do.
I wonder though if we didn't have all of these incredible movies before it to compare it to, how we would actually feel about it.
I think that's fair to say because, I think we expect a lot out of the Disney movies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's the funny thing. Like, if you think about a lot of the movies from this post-Renaissance period, like, there's a few in here that aren't bad, but they're just definitely not, like, they're not as high tier on the list of movies, like, all of the Renaissance movies, or even the next era we're about to talk about. Except for Lilo and Stitch. I will defend that movie till the day that I die. But after that, we have Meet the Robinsons, which some people consider this like the revival era. This is where it starts to begin. But this is when John Lasseter and Pixar really started to kind of have some influence on what Disney did. Around this time, John Lasseter was named Chief Creative Officer of both Pixar and Walt Disney Animation Studios. And one of the first things that he did was scrap half of this movie and implement so many changes. But he really made the difference and really kind of led this movie to be as moderate of a success as it was, which is why some people kind of consider this part of the revival. I honestly have no opinions on Meet the Robinsons because I know I've seen this, but I've fallen asleep on it more times than I've actually watched it.
I really like it. I don't like the character design at all, but as far as the storyline goes and like the character development, I think it's a really good movie. I think it's got a nice twist to it, and the part with the dinosaur is one of my favorite like comedic relief moments in a Disney film.
The big
where
head
he's
and
like,
little arms.
yeah,
part.
he's like, I got a big head and little arms. Yeah. So I think I think this is a good one.
And Bowler Hat Guy is also in the Booty You Parade, so that's another Disney Parks reference.
Wow, I wonder how unnoticed that reference goes.
I don't know. He's in the part of the Booty You Parade with where the villains march out. So like he's in there with all the other ones, but I feel like no one's gonna know who he was.
Right, that's kind of how I feel.
You might actually have better luck with people remembering the T-Rex than him.
Yeah, that's probably true. But then they would probably just think like, oh, it's a random T-Rex.
Right. But after that, we also have Bolt, which kind of follows the same footsteps as Meet the Robinsons. Another movie that lasted or kind of drastically changed, and this one was actually a critical and financial success. Their success. I kind of wanted to end it there, and then we can go through some of this stuff, because there's so many like movies in here that we could go over that are not great, and things that are like, less than perfect. Home on the Range.
We have to talk about that.
So
though.
Right, so that's where I want to end it with the history stuff. Now let's talk about these horrible movies.
Well, first of all, we're just gonna gloss over Bolt.
I
know
think
Brian
that
said
that's,
he doesn't really like it.
I think that's the perfect way to kind of
Oh
handle
my god,
Bolt.
you don't like it either, Mario?
This movie is not great.
Oh my god, have you guys ever had a pet?
Yep.
Yes, I have
This is
two of them.
heartbreaking. This is heartbreaking from the perspective of a pet owner. It's like, oh my god, my pet is out there doing the thing. And Mittens, she didn't have a family to love her. This is just, again, speaking of my sensitivities, like how these films get me. I do think it's weird that John Travolta was the voice of Bolt, and I still liked it so much.
I was gonna say, I hate the voice actors in this movie.
That's what kills it for me.
Really?
Yes.
That is what kills this movie for me, I think.
But I don't really think it sounds like John Travolta.
I do. I could hear him straight off, and something about
like
him,
I can definitely hear Miley Cyrus,
for sure.
but I didn't really feel like it was a very John Travolta-y sounding character.
Oh, it did.
Even though it was him.
Definitely did.
Yeah, and it.
Maybe I need to go back and watch it.
Yeah, he really took me out of it. I don't know. I'm not a big John Travolta fan, and I think he did a really, really bad job in this one.
Aww. But what about the pigeons?
Okay, the pigeons were one of the.
They're
I
awesome.
like the pigeons. They were good, but the storyline of this is just so. I don't know. I hate to use the word like ridiculous, but it's because it's an animated like kids movie, but
yeah, I mean it's very unrealistic. I
hate the whole part is like, oh, he doesn't know they're filming it. It's like you had some kind of special effect rigged up where this dog is holding a car out over a bridge with his mouth. Like how did you fake that with the dog not knowing?
It was like made of styrofoam or something.
But it's just I don't know.
Yeah, I do think like I can kind of agree with you on that part, and I think that is kind of obviously it needed a catalyst to get the movie started, but I feel like that is one like the weakest aspect of it is like he's a big star and he thinks that he has these superpowers. I know that was a big part of the film, but I really liked just he doesn't know how to be a dog, and like having to learn that part I thought was really
But see,
cute
I feel like they could have
endearing.
not even done the whole like superpower trope and just had him be like a dog that starred in movies and never had to like be a dog and then got separated and had to be a dog.
Yeah, but at the end he does this like he saves the day with his super bark. So they had to have that part, right?
If you say so.
So, hold on. I have to go back to this because one thing that we were talking about, or you guys were talking about with the pigeons, like, to me, the pigeons are just as important as the what is the plural word or plural form of moose? Is it
Meese.
whatever they are in Brother Bear?
I think it's just moose.
Yeah, they're just as important as the moose in Brother Bear. Like
Mooses?
Moose.
Is it
It's
mooses?
just moose.
I think it's just moose, but that doesn't feel right in
It's
my mouth.
musa. It's Latin, I think.
So, like I said, they're just as important as the two moose characters in Brother Bear. Like, they're just there for the
Yeah,
comic
but
relief.
those moose characters are less likable.
I thought they were more likable, but
Really? Than the pigeons?
no, I just wanted to to
Oh.
rustle your
I mean, I
feathers
don't-
over there.
I don't dislike the moose characters.
Are we gonna gloss over that
Whatever.
pun that Barbara just made?
Wait, I missed it.
Don't tell me that was not on purpose.
I'm so glad that you caught that, Brian.
Oh my god, say it again, I missed it.
No, you were getting all angry, and I said, I'm just trying to rustle your feathers over there.
Oh my god.
Oh,
And you just rolled
goodness.
right with
Totally
it.
went over my head.
Oh.
That's funny.
Oh, that was great.
Whew.
But I have to say that as far as like, you know, Disney does have this trend of the
Likeable
sidekick. The semi unimportant sidekick, because I wouldn't in Bolt specifically, I would say that Bolt's the main character and that Mittens and
Rhino.
Rhino,
Oh,
that's his
God, I
name.
couldn't stand
Mittens and Rhino are the sidekicks, but that they're like minor characters for comic relief. And I feel like as far as those minor, maybe not sidekicks, but just minor characters for comic relief in general, that these were really good examples. I also think that the moose characters, whatever their names were,
I can't remember.
Tut or something.
That's how unimportant this movie was.
Anyway, I'm thinking specifically now of Hey Hey and Moana, and I know that we'll get there, but I would have much rather seen these pigeons, even though it doesn't make any sense. But we'll get there, I guess.
And another one that we totally glossed over was Home on the Range, and we have to talk about this one because this is one that I think we've kind of like briefly talked about on the show. But let me say that this is by far one of my least favorite Disney movies. And it should
I've only watched half, and I'd say it is my least favorite.
It should never be anyone's favorite Disney movie. I'm sorry if I offended someone on that. Actually, no, I'm not even sorry if I offended someone on that.
I really wish that I had had a chance to finish it before we recorded this, so that I could have like a fully developed opinion on it. But even just the part that I saw, I had a lot of strong opinions.
This entire podcast has been a tangent, just so you know, and I have another one that I have to go out on. I feel like I've been on this tirade before, but a couple weeks ago when we actually started talking about this, I was telling you guys about my playlist that I was making. It was like full Alan Menken appreciation, and I was like, you know, I love he's one of my favorite composers, so I was going through and like adding different songs and stuff that he's done for different movies, and a lot of them obviously were in Disney movies. And Hercules has one of my favorite soundtracks. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. So I go to add the soundtrack for that, and there could not find it. There's 3 songs on there, and it's Go the Distance, the movie version, I Won't Say I'm in Love, and then Go the Distance, the Michael Bolton version, which I hardly acknowledge to begin with.
Oh, you don't like Michael Bolton?
Oh, God, no.
I mean, he's not a middle-aged woman, so what do you expect?
And still respect him.
Well, here's the thing. So I'm going through the movies that I know that he's done, and I know he worked on Home on the Range, and I'm like, you know what? To be fair, like, Little Patch of Heaven's okay. I don't hate that song. I'll put that in there. I go to search for it thinking it's not going to be on Spotify, and the entire album is on Spotify. So immediately you could understand my rage when I realize my favorite movie's not there, and then this pile of whatever you want to call it.
I'm sure they got the rights to Home on the Range a whole lot cheaper than they did for Hercules.
Well,
so think of it like that.
Here's the funny thing. So I angrily tweeted to both Spotify and Disney Music and was like, where's the Hercules soundtrack? Why is it not here? And No one responded to me, but 3 days later it was back on Spotify. So anyone that wanted to listen to it, you're welcome.
Hashtag difference maker.
So anyway, that's my tirade.
Funny.
But yeah, that's the only.
Playing off of that.
God,
Oh, I think you're gonna bring it up, aren't you?
what is she gonna bring up?
What?
Oh, are you bringing up another movie that?
Oh no, I was gonna talk about Home on the Range and specifically about the music, and the first song is so like weird and off-putting to me. Like, not necessarily the melody, but so I have really poor hearing, and so I watch movies and TV with the captions on. And so I honestly like watching with the captions on because I feel like there's a lot that I would have missed, A, because of my hearing, and like B, because characters talk really fast, or like they're talked over and there's stuff that goes on in the background. But so I got to read all of the lyrics while I was watching this earlier today, and like I just pulled them up to use a few examples. But like it says stuff like, if you're as soft as an avocado, yeehaw, you're guacamole, son. And out where the bad are a whole lot badder, if you're the type of with a nervous bladder, your saddle's gonna reek. And I'm like, excuse me, what is happening in this song? This is like not good at all.
Like I said, the only redeemable song in this soundtrack is Little Patch of Heaven, and I think that that's an actually decent one, even if you take it out of context of the movie. So I will say that that's the okay part of this.
I did like that song. I don't know what it's called, where it was like a really sad part where the lady's like packing up her house and all the animals at the farm are sad, and then the guys come and tell the sheriff that they lost his horse, and he's like all sad. This like really melancholy song is playing, and I was just like, man, this movie sucks, but it's still getting me in the feels with this song. So whatever that song is, I thought that was a good one.
So
but yeah, that whole storyline so far is just absolutely ridiculous.
So
like,
ridiculous.
I can't.
I don't think we've even said what the storyline is. For those that don't know, because obviously Home on the Range is like the most advertised Disney movie ever. It's about
Reed shoved under the rug.
Well, I mean, it's very close to some other movies that were shoved under the rug. But this movie is about cows that lose their farm and have to go find a new one. That's really all that this is about. Like, there's some other...
No, Mario, no. This movie is about cows who are losing their farm to the bank and get this grand scheme to find this bad bandit guy that the reward for his capture just happens to be the exact amount of money that they need to save the farm.
Device.
And the villain guy, the bandit, he's not a bank robber. He steals people's cows. And do you know how he steals their cows? He yodels and it hypnotizes
Oh God,
them.
yeah, no, now it's
I
all
wish
coming back
I was
to
making
me.
this up.
You know what?
I wish I was making
I feel
this
like
up.
the one that I just wrote had a better story than this one because I forgot that all of that
Yeah,
happens.
I agree. Yes. So honestly, I would recommend, like I said, I've only watched half of it, but I would recommend going to watch it if you just want to be like amazed at how bad a movie can be, and how like there's just all of the jokes are so corny and not funny. Roseanne Barr, end of story.
I think the biggest thing that speaks volumes to how bad this is I think you can go through any Disney animated movie, even some of the very, very poorly received ones, the unpopular ones throughout the years, and you can see that Disney made merchandise for it. My challenge for any of our listeners this week, find me a single piece of Home on the Range merchandise. I just looked this up, and it is a ghost town on the internet for this movie.
Yeah.
That is a really
So,
great challenge. I'm interested to see.
I don't think anybody's gonna be able to come up with one. But before we move to the last era, I want to talk about one gem that we have missed and that I don't think anybody really talks about. Can we talk about Enchanted?
Oh,
Because
yeah.
Oh,
that is
yes.
such a good movie, and honestly, it is literally a parody of every Disney movie that we love and all of the classic Disney tropes. I think that this is like probably, if Lilo and Stitch wasn't in this era, I would consider this one of my favorite movies. I think.
Yeah, I forgot to
Although
even consider it in the animated.
It is a hybrid.
Yeah, but
So it's technically not part of this era, but I completely agree with your sentiments and think that Enchanted is
so we
incredible,
won't dwell on it too
especially
much.
with Dina
But
Menzel. Yeah.
no, I saw that on the list of movies because I was trying to see who hasn't seen what, and I really wanted to make fun of someone. But honestly, with half of these movies, I can't blame you guys for not seeing them.
Well,
Oh my god, my favorite part of Enchanted is when they're like they're walking in the park and she starts singing the song and the guy on the steel drum starts playing.
You know this song?
And yeah, how does he know this song?
Oh, that's so good.
Well, how does everyone know
I think
this
that's
song?
the best part about this movie is that, like, I know I kind of touched on this with, like, Emperor's New Groove. Like, this does not take itself seriously in the best way, and it works so well because, like, if you think about all of the tropes from any Disney princess movie or any, like, really any Disney movie in general, a lot of them translated to real life would not work out, and Enchanted does exactly that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
I love that movie.
Yeah, I agree.
So do we want to
Man.
dive... Oops, sorry, go ahead, Brian.
Are we really gonna leave this era without even bringing up the wild?
Oh,
Oh man.
I...
Yeah, I think we should.
Yeah, that's about it.
The one that no one remembers
Oh my
because it
God.
really wasn't that important.
And it really, like, it was really only distributed by Disney, but still, I'm surprised that they put
Oh
their
man,
name
I
on
wouldn't
this
have
at
wanted
all.
to touch this thing with a 10-foot pole if I was anybody with any kind of like decision making at Disney.
Yeah. And it's like, this was their response to Madagascar, except they didn't do it
Let's
very
rip
well.
it off, but make it worse.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Man. I literally had to convince my boyfriend that movie existed.
I feel like that's actually a like one of those Mandela effects because I didn't know that movie existed.
Yeah. Like, I remember seeing it a really long time ago, and I remember, honestly, I thought it was DreamWorks until literally, like, a month ago, or 2 weeks ago, or whenever we started, like, preparing for this, and I was like, oh my god, that was distributed by Disney, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Not that, like I said, I'm not gonna hate too bad on DreamWorks, but I did think it was DreamWorks for a while.
Whew. So do you want to dive into the revival era, as it's called, which is the current era that we're in?
Yes, because it starts with the best Disney movie.
Okay, so starting this one off with Princess and the Frog, which, as all of you have guessed, is Beth's favorite movie. So this movie brings back the hand-drawn animation style that was kind of starting to fade from a lot of these Disney movies. As you can tell, like with Meet the Robinsons and Bolt, it was really kind of on its way out, and obviously after this one we haven't seen another one, but it pushed a lot of Go ahead.
I was going to point out that when I was reading about Home on the Range, that Home on the Range was intended to be the last hand-drawn film that Disney made. But and this part isn't confirmed. This is just my speculation. It was so bad that they're like, we can't let this be our legacy. Like, we can't let this be the last one. And so that's why they made Princess and the Frog, and they did an incredible job. And now nobody even thinks about Home on the Range because they don't have to.
Well, that worked then.
So I have a question
Yeah.
for you, Beth, because in my reading about Princess and the Frog, I read a lot of like divisive things about this movie, and kind of the fact that it wasn't a financial success really makes me feel like that may have been truly what killed it, along with the kind of like the way that I guess the critics received it, because a lot of people were like, oh, they didn't handle the culture of this princess right, which, let's be real, Disney never handles culture right.
And I mean, you know, that's always a hard perspective, like coming from someone who is not a person of color, but I genuinely don't feel like when I was watching this that there were very many racial undertones. Like, the only thing that I could really see was the fact that Charlotte, her best friend, was the super, like, daughter of this super wealthy, like, cotton baron or whatever, like, her
you
dad
missed the
did.
biggest racial undertone, though. Like,
oh, or are you talking about the like Ray the
no,
Firefly?
not
and,
that
like,
one,
the
not even
Bayou
that one.
stuff?
The part where
What?
it's not even an undertone, it's definitely like right out there. When they're at the party and she's talking to the two bankers and they're like, oh yeah, your building's been sold, and she says, but I saved all this money for the down payment, and they say, oh yeah, but you know, someone else bought it from you, and he says, I understand that it's difficult for a person of your position. And
I always assumed that was because she was a woman.
I've always heard that was a
but I could totally see that.
stereotype, and I guess for both of those, really, it could be.
Well, but also
Yeah.
the time period that this was
But that's
set,
a minor thing.
that would be, I mean, is it wrong for it to portray some of, you know, what would have been going on in that era?
No.
Right. It's like it's one thing to take a racial stereotype and inflate it to the point of like offensiveness. But if you're being genuine to the time period and you're not being offensive about it, that's why I said, like, I don't really see a whole lot of racial undertones in this film.
Yeah, and kind of like to bring up a topic that we talked about last week. I know we were discussing Song of the South, which did you by any chance get the chance to watch, Beth? I know I sent it to you. And Brian and I kind of were like,
it's still
sorry,
on my
what were you
to-do.
saying?
It's still on my
Okay,
to-do list.
so I know Brian and I were talking about how, like, depending on your perspective, it can or cannot be very offensive, and it could be blown out of proportion. If you really think about when a lot of these movies are set, like, I don't think Disney really kind of glossed over a lot with things just to gloss over them. I don't think that, like, anything there was done maliciously. But the biggest problem that I was reading about with Song of the South, and even when I went back and watched it, is they don't immediately express when the movie was set. So a lot of the relationships between the people of color and the, I guess, white people, like the relationships there can also be portrayed as like a happy working slave relationship, because it's not explicitly stated that it's in the Reformation era. And like with Princess and the Frog, I think the fact that they had like established this is when it's set, this is what's going on, like, and you kind of know a lot of the stereotypes are overlooked because of that. You know?
In the Princess and the
I
Frog?
think because Disney was like outright, and they were like, this is how it is, this is where it's set, and we're like that. I think that was what they did really well here versus say something like Song of the South, where it was like they didn't put even like a title card in there that said this is when the movie's set to give you any indication of this, and they were kind of more outright about like those things, you know? Because I feel like any of these could really kind of be racially or morally wrong.
See, like, I don't disagree with that, but at the same time, I feel like for example, Tiana, to my knowledge, is the first princess to actually have a job.
She is, I think.
Like, and I feel like a lot of the, like, kind of going back to what I was saying, a lot of the, like, criticism that it gets for being racial is because her best friend, who's this, like, blonde-haired, blue-eyed white girl who is, like, you know, super rich and wealthy, and she just spends all of her daddy's money. And then Tiana is working 2 jobs trying to save up money to, like, you know, get her restaurant because that's her big dream. But, and, like, I could see how that could be misconstrued, but at the same time, I feel like you could put any, like, Tiana could be any race, and that's something that people can relate to. It's like, you know, being, like, having to work really hard and struggling to make ends meet, I feel like is a thing that most Americans can probably relate to. So I don't see it as a racial thing in that aspect.
Yeah, and I
That's a
mean,
good point.
everything I've said, I don't think this movie was like racially charged or anything. I personally love this movie. I think it's one of the best of this period specifically.
The best.
But like, so even with that, like, I think that, like you said, you could really put anyone in her place, and it's such an admirable thing to be like, this is a working class princess, and that's
She's so
right.
relatable.
She isn't like all of the other Disney princesses that they're born into royalty. They have this money. They're just here, and there's no reason for it. Like, Tiana's whole motif is that she works hard to get everything that she wants, and even then, she still faces struggles.
Right.
I don't know. I love this movie too. I
Plus, it's just like, I this is a common theme in like How to Win My Heart, but I just love when you take a character and they're super dislikable at the beginning, and then you grow to love them at the end because they develop so much and they become like a better person. And I feel like that is so true of Naveen, because he's this, like, charming, like, rich prince, and he's like attractive, and he gets everything he wants, and he's good with the ladies, and Tiana's just like completely unimpressed with him, and then they end up like helping each other change for the better and falling in love, obviously. And I love those kinds of stories.
I think another great thing about this movie, and I've kind of said this with a couple other ones, is that a lot of the characters have more of a motivation and have more of a like a reason to do the things that they do. Like you said with Naveen and Tiana, like even the sidekicks of this movie, which really, you've got Ray, who's he has a motif too. Like he wants his Evangeline, and then you also have Lewis, who really just wants to play jazz music. Like you everyone there has a motive, and I think that that's just like a beautiful way that Disney chose to tell this story.
Yeah, and it's just like, I just feel like all of the characters in this film, like, the only one that I would say that I don't love is Lawrence, which is the short fat dude that like Naveen's, I don't know if you'd say servant, but his like assistant, whatever. And I just don't think he's a likable character. But I feel like literally every other like character is likable in some way, whether it's even the frog hunters in the bayou, they're great comedic relief, and I feel like that's a really interesting, like, special thing
and
about
even
this.
Kind of to play off of that, even he has the motives as well, even though they're only briefly thrown at you. Like, his whole motive is that he wants to be someone that everyone, adores and loves, because he's been pushed around his whole life, and that's thrown at you through the Friends on the Other Side song. Like, Disney did a really good job of storytelling in this movie, and everyone kind of just forgets about it.
Yeah, totally agree. Like, there's just so many good things. I could literally do an entire episode about The Princess and the Frog, because obviously it's my favorite. But I genuinely, like, the reason it's my favorite is because it has such great characters, and it has such an awesome storyline and like good moral ground that it's standing on, and like we said, how relatable Tiana is, and the music is incredible, and the animation is beautiful, and the villain is so cool. It's just like all of these things are working together so well in this film to make it so awesome. I think it's a shame that like more people don't appreciate it.
Yeah, I agree. I actually wholeheartedly agree with this. So do we want to move on to Tangled, or do we want to like just keep going with The Princess and the Frog here?
No, we can move on. I'm not gonna monopolize the podcast about my favorite movie. I do want to throw in a couple of fun facts though. Did you know that Ray is voiced by Jim Cummings, who voices Winnie the Pooh?
Yes, I did actually know that, and that's really cool.
I thought that was really cool. And also, Dr. Facilier, who is the coolest Disney villain of all time, is voiced by Keith David, who was the cat in Coraline.
Did not know that.
So, yeah, he's a great voice actor. He's also the Arbiter in the Halo franchise.
Oh yeah, that's
if
right.
you guys play that. So, he's very versatile.
So, next up on our Disney movie list would be Tangled, the 2010 movie that was a massive success. Funny enough, I did not know this or didn't really realize this, but they actually took the name, like they took the movie and changed it from being just called Rapunzel and focusing on, I guess, the female audience and naming it Tangled, which would be more kind of neutral, with the expectations that it wouldn't kind of be as bad of a box office money earner as Princess and the Frog.
Yeah, from what I understood, they did a focus group with the title Rapunzel, and like it was pretty across the board that the demographic of like male children were uninterested at the first hearing that. So they were like, all right, we got to come up with a catchy
I
title.
also think it kind of gives Disney more liberty to kind of pull away from the original story too.
Well, and apparently this is the first time that they had ever done anything like that. Like, Disney was always taking the name of the actual fairy tale and using it as their title, which, I mean, now that I've said that, thinking back on it, like, that's pretty obvious. But now that they've done this, it gives them more, like you said, more freedom. They can do really whatever they want.
Yeah.
But apparently the expectations were high, and it actually doubled the revenue of Princess and the Frog, which almost like dwarfs that movie under Tangled. As sad as that is to say.
I think that it's interesting that I feel like Tangled started this, you know, obviously since it wasn't the like traditional animation, it started this character design of these like big eyes, if you guys have noticed.
Yeah.
And I think, like, I don't think that that's a bad thing. Like, I think that, you know, I think that Rapunzel and Anna and Elsa and Moana are all beautifully done characters. I just thought that was an interesting, like, all right, this is the direction we're going in. They're all gonna have big eyes. Like, I wonder how that came to be.
Yeah, and the funny thing about that is, like, if you really look at all of the movies that come next, they do really have that similar style.
Yeah, which I don't know if you guys have, like, I'm sure you have seen the clips from Wreck-It Ralph where it's got all the princesses in the same room. Did you notice that the ones that are like have these big eyes look so natural, whereas all the other ones don't, because they made them fit into that mold?
That is a good point.
Yeah.
But anyway. Yeah, I love this movie. It's easily got one of my favorite romantic storylines anyway.
I love this movie. I think it's great. I think Disney did an incredible job, and I still, to this day, will say that Tangle always deserves more than her bathroom. That's all I'm going to say.
Oh my god, don't even get me started, Mario. I was so excited when I saw that tower go up, and when I found out it was a bathroom, I was so
Guys, it has a bathroom and a photo pass opportunity.
Okay, but the photo pass opportunity is the best one.
The photo pass, it really is one of the coolest photo pass opportunities, but the fact that it's in front of a bathroom, Brian.
Well, and
I agree. It deserves much better.
I think we've talked about this on the show, but this was like the Tangled bathrooms were like my first like I need to know everything that's going on in the Disney park moment, because I remember going with my my aunt, and we were in Columbia Harbor House, and I could see over the construction walls from where we were sitting, and I was like, oh my gosh, what's going on? I was so excited. I remember that there wasn't a lot like of news about that. Like when people were talking about it, it wasn't like Tangled bathrooms are coming. Everybody's like, what is this that Disney's building? And then they would just unveil bathrooms, and it was like the most let down disappointment thing ever. And now here we are, like 8 years later, and I'm doing a Disney podcast.
When did those bathrooms
It had to
open?
be like right after the movie, because it was around.
No, it was. I think it was when they were.
Yeah,
doing
it was
Fantasyland,
around
wasn't
then.
it?
So it was after that, but still.
Yeah, but still, it's I can't even talk about it.
So
I will admit though that I do go out of my way to use those.
they're the nicest bathrooms on
because
property.
They are
like,
so nice. Yeah.
even the cleanest, I would say, because it's just they're so nice. I
Yeah.
think they are. I don't know. Maybe we'll do a superlative of top 10 Disney bathrooms.
Oh my god.
There's plenty of news articles out there about that if you're really that interested.
I gotta say that's not something that I think about a lot. When I think about Disney bathroom, pretty much Tangled is the
I'm
only one I
actually
think
hoping
of.
that Kirsten is listening back to this and knows the exact article that I'm thinking of, because whatever Tom Bricker's blog is did one that was like top 5 Disney bathrooms. Disney Tourist blog. Yeah. But yeah, that's
That's when you've run out of stuff to talk about, I think.
I don't know.
Like, I'd rather talk about favorite Disney trash cans than bathrooms. I feel like they have more character.
Some of the Disney bathrooms are pretty nice, but that is not about Disney animation, so let's leave that out of this show.
That's true.
So after Tangled, we have Winnie the Pooh, which a lot of people tend to forget about because it's sandwiched between Frozen and Tangled. This is another package film, and it's considered the last traditional Disney animated film, even though it's more of the same that we come to expect from Winnie the Pooh. This was one that was actually not a direct-to-DVD movie, and it did come out in theaters. And even though it was one of the best animated films of 2011, it actually didn't do well financially, which I think this probably cemented the actual end of animation for Disney. But let's talk about the monster, the elephant in the room, Frozen, which literally my notes say, do I really need to put anything down about this? Because I'm sure that we could talk about this.
Frozen happened. We know what happened.
Yeah.
Everybody that's listening to this knows about Frozen.
Disney definitely knows Frozen happened. They're not going to let us forget that they know that Frozen happened.
I really, and I really hate how over, saturated everyone has gotten with Frozen. Like, Disney has just shoved it in our faces so hard for so long. Like, this movie came out, 5 years ago?
Why does it seem like it came out 10 years ago?
It literally came out 5 years ago, and it's like it came out yesterday. And I feel like, so when I saw Frozen on opening night, and I really liked it. I thought it was great. And it was great for several months until everyone started obsessing over it and shoving it in my face. And then I was just like, I'm so tired of hearing about this movie. It's making me not like it anymore.
I agree. I loved it the first time I saw it. And it's like, Disney is ruining Frozen.
Yes, absolutely.
Here's my hot take on Frozen. I am the same boat as you guys. I saw it 4 times in theaters, absolutely loved it. I think one of the biggest things that Disney did was that this became a huge financial success, and that's why they really pushed it. But other than that, it hit all of those Disney tropes, and you hit the funny sidekick with Olaf, the love story with Anna and Kristoff, and then you have that weird awful twist that you should have seen coming from the very beginning of the movie with Anna and Hans, and there's so many things in there that I think Disney did right, and they did in the classic Disney vein, but they also did things that quote unquote shook up the formula, with Elsa being the main protagonist and antagonist, and she also really had no love interest. The love interest wasn't the forefront of the story. It was kind of more about sisterly bonding, but everyone tends to forget that underneath all of those things that it did right, it's still the same old formula that Disney has always used in every one of their movies.
Well, I see. Here's the thing that I think makes it stand out as far as the storyline goes. If I'm not mistaken, when it was originally in development, Elsa was supposed to be the villain.
Yeah.
And then they wrote Let It Go, and they were like, this is too powerful and uplifting, like empowering of a song for a villain to sing. So they basically had to completely change the direction that they were going in. And I think that shows. Because there's, even Hans is like, yeah, it's like bad, like he wanted to kill them. Like, that's as villainous as it gets. But it's like, you really didn't hate him until the last 15 minutes of the movie. And it didn't give you, like, Frozen didn't give you a chance to have that, like, I don't know, conflict, really. Like, the only conflict that you really had throughout most of the film was Elsa being like, I don't want to come home, and Anna being like, Elsa, come home. And it's not, like, a strong enough conflict, in my opinion, that, I don't know. It's a weak okay, conflict.
I'm going to throw this out here just because you said this. I was going to keep this to myself. But everyone always regards that Hans twist to be so much more, like, to be so painful because you're, like, kind of, rooting for him and Anna because they have that one moment together and everything. Like, I know a lot of people say that that's one of the best, like, Disney twist style things, but let me say that the twist in Treasure Planet and the twist in my heart that is Long John Silver is so much better than the Hans twist.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, I'm just gonna throw that out there now.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that, like I said, you don't hate Hans until the last 10-15 minutes of the movie, so it's just like, and he does absolutely nothing in the, like, except in that last 15 minutes to imply that he's bad
That's
at all.
just showing how manipulative he is.
Oh, I think it's just showing how they had to completely change directions at the last minute.
That's probably what it was.
I do have to say that Frozen touched my soul in a very powerful way when Elsa says, "You can't marry a man you just met."
Yeah. So
that was the one realistic aspect of the movie.
I want to pose a question to anyone that's listening to this. Were you able to figure out that Hans was not going to be the good guy, like, pretty early on in the movie? Because I feel like the first time I wasn't paying too much attention to it, but, like, the second or third time that I actually saw that movie, even knowing that he was, like, gonna be the quote-unquote bad guy or whatever you want to call him, like, a lot of people still were like, oh, that's still such a good twist. Like, the more I saw that movie, the more I was like, no, you can see kind of early on that he's gonna, like he has that motive.
That face. Like, he has the face. That's literally the only thing that I think would have given it away to me, is because he has kind of this, if you look at the like, quote-unquote lovable characters, or like the protagonists, they typically have, like, more of a round, like, or oval shaped face, whereas villains typically have more of, like, a pointy, like, thin kind of face. And I think that that's a lot of times will show you from the very beginning, like, this is who's going to be the bad guy. It's not foolproof by any means. So I do feel like Hans has that kind of appearance to him. But I mean, if you look at how he acts in the film from, like, objectively, and if you just took, like, everything except for that last part where he says, "Oh, Anna, if only someone loved you," he does absolutely nothing wrong. Like, he's not mean to anybody. He doesn't do anything, like, sketchy or creepy. Like, he's literally handing out blankets to people and saying, "Hey, there's, like, warm soup in the castle. Like, come in and warm up. Like, wow, this weather's crazy." Like, it's poor character development. And like I said, it's because they didn't put the work in after they had to change their minds.
Well, I hated him ever since he started singing "Love is an Open Door." So,
oh my God, really?
That might be my least favorite Disney song ever.
I love that song. That is such a great duet.
I am under the unpopular opinion that I hate most of the songs in this soundtrack. So
that's really, like, the only one that I hate, but I loathe it.
Please tell me you don't like.
I don't like the reindeer.
Oh,
song,
I love the
whatever
reindeer
it's called.
song.
No, it's, like, too weird and goofy for me. I think
that's what makes it
it's
work,
like, I don't
though.
hate it, but I guess. You know, the one thing that my really big criticism about this is how they cast Jonathan Groff as Kristoff and then he barely sings.
Yeah, okay, that's fair.
Like, what are you doing? Like, did you originally have him singing more? Like, did you not know that he has an amazing voice? What's going on? So, anyway, that's my opinion on that.
Yeah. But how did we miss the Easter egg in this movie and not talk about the fact that Rapunzel is in the
Oh, right. Man, that set off some wild conspiracy conspiracy theories or whatever.
I just wanted to touch on that because
no,
conspiracy theories,
really cool.
I love them. We can kind of gloss over that because we've been at this for a while and we still have like 3 more movies to talk about.
Right.
So let's talk about Big Hero 6 because I thoroughly enjoy this movie. This is also the first time that Disney took a Marvel superhero movie and made it an animated film, which a lot of people don't really know.
I did not know that.
Yes, it is actually a Marvel property.
Wow.
I don't know, like, it's not, if I remember correctly, it's not 100% like the characters are kind of similar to the characters that are in the Marvel property, but it's not like 100% the same, and Marvel actually hasn't really acknowledged this, like the Big Hero 6 stuff, in a really long time, so Disney was kind of like digging deep into their archives to pull this out. Which is actually why Stan Lee has a cameo in the end credits scene of Big Hero 6.
Oh my god, so awesome.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm a huge fan of how Stan Lee makes cameo in every Marvel film, and I'm just so excited that they animated him.
Yeah,
for
that was great.
They didn't have to do that. They didn't have to.
Well, and that's the thing is, like, no one would know that this is a Marvel movie technically, but there's that cameo.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think this may be one of my favorite movies. I'm not even gonna lie. I think this is a way up there.
Incredible film.
And let me say that I'm happy that the Baymax meet and greet has stuck around because that's one of my favorite meet and greets. Like, I'm not a huge character person, but I will go meet Baymax every time.
Yeah. I mean, it's such a fun one because it's just like this big puffy thing that you get to hug. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, alongside the meet and greet thing, did you ever actually get to meet him when Hero was with him?
No.
I have a selfie with him and Hero, and
cool.
It's the weirdest thing because
the Hero
sometimes
I've seen pictures and I'm like, it's kind of weird because it's like a fully grown adult.
Yep, in a wig that looks like it just like rolled out of bed.
Yeah.
But I love this movie. I don't think I could say anything bad about it.
Me either, and this is another one that every time I watch it, I sob.
Yeah.
It's the end. Oh God, I can't think about it. It's great, and this is another really cool villain. Just with, like the mask and everything, like just the design, but also like the technology behind it, I thought was really interesting.
Well, and kind of along the line that we were talking about with the last one with Frozen and all that, is like, I thought this twist for the villain was a lot better done than even that one. Like,
absolutely.
I really didn't even expect that to be who it was. I honestly just expected it to be kind of like, this is going to sound like I'm bashing on Marvel, but I love Marvel movies. Like, there's always that one point where you're kind of like, oh yeah, that person is just the villain and I accept it. Like, a lot of the times with superhero movies and stuff like that, you really do just kind of accept that that's the villain. Yeah. And sometimes, I mean, Marvel's done an okay job with a lot of these too, where like you get to kind of know the villain through the movie, but this one kind of just like, you met him early on, you knew you got a clear example of what his motives were, and then you kind of, from there, weren't expecting it, but then you kind of understood it.
Yeah, because you thought he died.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? Oh my God, that makes me so mad. That's why Hadashi went back in there, was to save him, and then he... It makes me so mad. Hey, And Brian, you've seen it, right?
Yeah.
So you have seen a Marvel movie.
There you go.
Okay.
But you didn't
You
know
know,
that.
You
I
didn't know
remember
it.
saying that, and let me clarify. I haven't seen any of the like Avenger Marvel movies. I have seen Guardians, so
Okay.
That
Yeah.
counts. I love Guardians.
Oh, absolutely. I would say anything in the cinematic universe counts.
okay.
But that's the only one.
I've seen both Guardians.
I mean, those are probably two.
There's
of
some of the
my
better
favorites, but I would still recommend going back and watching them. And just since
Ooh.
we're on the topic of really great twists, I don't want to give any spoilers away because this is still a semi-recent movie. But Mario, did you see Spider-Man: Homecoming?
Are you kidding? Spider-Man is my favorite Marvel superhero.
Okay,
I
so
love
that
it.
twist when he opens the door,
Yeah, that was an incredible one.
that like me, my mouth, I was just like, what? So anyway, maybe that'll pique your interest, Brian.
I also really want to like turn this back around and say, fun fact that I'm sure you didn't know. The song Star Spangled Man from the first Avenger was actually written by Alan Menken. So
Is
throwing that out
that
there.
the theme song?
That's the one that I think it is technically the theme song, but it's the one that they sing in all of like the promotional videos that he does for like the war efforts.
What's it called? Star Spangled Man?
Yeah, it's called Star Spangled Man.
I'll have to listen to it. That's really cool.
I think he did the like the music for it, if I'm correct, because someone else wrote the lyrics for it. But still, just to tie it back into all of our other talk about Disney Renaissance and stuff. But there's two more movies that I think we haven't touched on, and I kind of wanted to take Zootopia a little bit in depth, so this may be a long episode. It already is over 2 hours, so
I mean, you can't rush through this topic.
you really can't.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about Zootopia for a second because that's the next one that comes out after this in 2016, and I found a really interesting article. I know I've kind of brought up Song of the South a lot, but this article specifically compared how Zootopia handles prejudice versus the perceived racism in Song of the South. And I thought that was really cool because a lot of people, when Zootopia came out, were talking about how that movie was really, it did have kind of an adult audience to it. I unfortunately never actually saw Zootopia in theaters. I only saw it like months after it came out, and I regretted that decision instantly because I think that this is an incredible movie. But what do you guys think about Zootopia before I really go into my take on there?
I absolutely love Zootopia.
Yeah, I think it's one of the best that Disney's done, like hands down, throughout their entire range of movies.
See, and this is a theme that Disney has been doing in the past few years that I really like, is how they have these like sort of adventure stories that don't revolve around a romantic element. Which, don't get me wrong, I'm a woman. I love a good good romantic storyline, but it's so refreshing to not have that in a film also.
Well, I think this movie especially, when Disney really took, such a, I think, forward-thinking way of going about, introducing racism and stuff into the movie, that it shouldn't have been, like, clouded over with some romantic thing that they were trying to throw in there.
Right.
Like, I think Disney did a really good job with that and leaving that aspect out of this movie.
Yeah, I would totally agree.
And I think that Disney handled, like, this is such a good way to subtly address something like that. Such a big topic of, like, prejudice and all of the other things. Like, it's super cool to see that Disney took this movie about animals, and even down to the point that it was, like, about the predators and the prey. And, Judy has kind of always had this mentality that the predators aren't anything but predators, and even to the point that she's given fox spray before she leaves her family. Like, everything about those little subtle hints that they've come to become afraid of these people because that's what they know. Like, there's just the fact that they tied that in, and then at the very end, even to the point that she kind of reveals that prejudice, and like when it gives like that twist of all that stuff. I'm not going to go through the whole movie, but yeah. So this movie just did a really good job in tackling that, and I honestly think that this is the best way that we can ever address anything like this.
Yeah, and it's like they're taking a really important, like prominent in today's society, especially political topic, and making it accessible to kids, like in a way that they can understand. Yeah,
and that's super important, and I think that that's something that, like, I'm really proud of Disney for doing this. Like, I think that this was, like I said, this is the best way they could handle a topic like this, and to do it in such a way that not only is sensitive, but also kind of puts it out there and says, listen, like, this is a thing. Like, I know we've talked about how Disney shies away from Song of the South because there's a negative reaction to it, but I think that the reason that this was received so much more positively was because they were just outright, and they were like, yeah, she is afraid of this person because of who he is, and he may not actually be that thing.
And, I mean, to do all that and at the same time make such an enjoyable movie.
Exactly.
Yeah, like, this movie was such a great blend of, like, taking a serious, like, political theme, but also having really great, like, comedy aspects, and I love all of the, like, references and kind of, like, the Easter eggs where they're looking at the, like, bootleg DVDs and stuff. Like, putting all that stuff together, they did it really, really well.
Yeah.
And the mob, what were they, shrews or moles or something? You come to me on this day of my daughter's wedding.
Yeah.
I love that how they took that and made it work.
And even, like, I love the scene. I know this is kind of like it was in the commercials and everything, but even the scene of the DMV with the sloths, like, tell me that's not so funny.
Literally so relatable.
I think the funniest thing about this movie is that there's so many things in this one for parents specifically.
Yeah.
So after that, we have the most recent release. I didn't put this in our notes, and I know someone just put "Consider the Coconut" in here.
That was me.
But I knew we had to talk about it, and I really didn't feel like doing research because this movie's still fresh in my mind. Moana. And this movie, I can't find a bad thing to say about Moana.
The only bad thing I have is Hey Hey, and that's not even that bad. I just think...
What did you not like about Hey Hey?
I think it was just like... Okay, so here's my real problem with Hey Hey. Is that before Moana came out, all of the, like, marketing, like, the toys and the merchandise and the commercials, whatever, all made it seem like Pua was going to be her sidekick. And Pua is super adorable. And so I was just a little bit bitter that Pua's in the movie for, like, 10 minutes. And I think that Hey Hey takes a little bit of the brunt for that. But I think it's also, like, it's, like, not comedic relief in a way that is clever. It's, like, slapsticky, kind of. And I'm not a fan of slapstick.
Yeah, I can see that. But, I don't know. I feel like Hey Hey takes that role of, like you said, the comedic sidekick. And it does it in a way that really kind of draws less attention on them. Because, like, if you think about it, look at all of the other comedic sidekicks, or even specifically the ones from the Renaissance. Like, my mind's immediately drawing to Pegasus, but I want to go for, like, a more popular one here, and I'm just not, my brain is not functioning right now. Think, like, Cogsworth and Lumiere from Beauty and the Beast. Like, they're more of the, like, the side character, but they're still important. But they have so much of a fleshed out personality that I feel like with something like Moana, where it's specifically focused on her and her soul searching and all of that, like, that really could have been overshadowed by putting too much into a side character.
But at the same time, I feel like they could have completely left Hey Hey out of the movie and it still would have been just as good.
That's true. I won't disagree with that.
And I think that that's a bad argument for a character, like, in a character's defense. It's like, if you could take a character out of a movie and it would still probably be just as good, then maybe they didn't belong there in the first place. But
You know,
like I
I'm
said,
good-
I don't hate Hey Hey. I just am mildly annoyed by Hey Hey.
I feel like he has some importance, and I can't remember quite what it is.
I feel like that too. Like if I thought about it hard enough, I would realize like, oh, he did this part that was something. I don't know.
He had some kind of major plot device that really made him important to the movie, and that's why we should keep him in here. But
I did
no,
like
I kind of agree.
I did like the one joke where Maui signs the oar, and he's like, when you sign it with a bird, that's called tweeting. So that was nice, but I don't think of any others.
I think that this movie, I know it kind of started to gain a little more of the following that Frozen had, but I think this movie probably deserves a lot more than that. I don't think that this movie's crowded down with as many characters as Frozen had. I think that it definitely truly kind of exemplifies the whole not need for a romantic relationship in a tale, and it really has that strong female lead that everyone really wanted out of Frozen. I think this is everything I wanted Frozen to be and a little bit more.
Yeah, this movie is like, I can't say objectively because no opinion is objective, but I think that you could do a little, scientific survey on this, and most people would say that Moana is better overall.
I think it definitely has a lot more depth than Frozen did.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So, now that we've completed this entire list, we've gone through all of these, and I know last week, I know we're short Kirsten now, so me asking this question might not be too big, but we did this last week when Beth asked, what are your top 3 movies from the periods we've talked about?
This one's a lot harder.
It's so much harder, and I wanted to ask because I feel like it's harder because we grew up with so many of them. We have that nostalgia aspect that we were really talking about, and there's so many good movies here.
Yeah. I would have to pick Aladdin, The Lion King, and Zootopia.
Okay.
Well, my first number 1 is obviously Princess and the Frog, so now I just need to figure out what 2 and 3 are. So if you know yours, Mario, you can go ahead.
Okay. I feel like this changes for me so much, so I'm going to say this now, and then when I go to edit, I'm going to be like, Mario, no! But I'm going to say, and I think this may actually be the definitive 3, Hercules, Treasure Planet, and No.
We didn't even make it through and picking the 3 before you
because I
regretted
forgot
it.
the most important one because it's so much better than it deserves. Hercules, Lilo and Stitch, and Tangled, and that's going to bump Treasure Planet off. Because I looked at it and I was like, how am I going to miss this one?
Okay, I'm going to say Princess and the Frog, of course. Number 2, I'm going to say Moana. And number 3, I'm going to say Pocahontas.
That's fair.
That's the thing. Like after last week, hearing some of y'all's top 3s, I was kind of like, ugh. But there's just like so many good movies from these eras. I feel like they all make sense.
Honestly, though, if any of you had said Chicken Little, I would have kicked you off this podcast.
Did we even talk about Chicken Little?
No, I don't think we did. I don't hate
That's
Chicken
okay.
Little, but
Well, no, the fair one would have been Home on the Range. That would have been the one where I've been like, cords cut, you're out. Sorry.
right. I don't think Home on the Range is anybody's favorite anything.
So, now I know I've already asked a question to our listeners, but let's turn this around and ask our listeners. I know we didn't really do this last week, but what are your favorite 3 from the last episode and then the ones from this episode? We'll be nice. Give you a little breakup in there.
Yeah.
Just because I'm interested to see everyone's post-Renaissance favorites.
Yeah, I think it would, again, like I think I said this last week too, it'd be a lot easier for me to definitively say if I got to go by era, but I think I'm pretty content with my picks.
We can go harder if you'd like. We can say, what are your favorite top 3 from post-Renaissance? Because I feel like
Oh, that
There's not a lot
honestly is not hard for me.
Really? Well, I guess. No, that would be very easy for me too, because then I would just go Lilo and Stitch, Treasure Planet, and Atlantis.
I would probably say Princess and the Frog, Moana, and Zootopia.
Well, I meant like the post-Renaissance era, not.
Oh, like directly after it. I
Yeah,
thought you
yeah.
meant like anything after it.
Oh no, not like that chunk of, from Fantasia 2000 to Bolt.
Oh, I mean, that's not really hard for me either. My number one would definitely be Treasure Planet. I would say number 2, Bolt. And
Wrong answer, Beth.
sorry, number 3, unpopular opinion, Dinosaur.
Even more of a wrong answer.
Oh no. This is like
I like an
This is-
underdog, okay?
Well, no. Here's the thing: the fact that you didn't put Lilo and Stitch over either of those.
I mean,
is...
I honestly.
No, it's just I'm kidding.
Here's my other really unpopular opinion.
Oh,
I like Lilo and Stitch 2, Stitch Has a Glitch better than the original. Sorry. Don't get me wrong, I do love Lilo and Stitch. But I think
That's
Stitch
okay.
Has a Glitch is incredible and very, like, under-acknowledged.
Yeah, I will say that it is under-acknowledged. What about you, Brian?
I'm gonna say Emperor's New Groove first, Treasure Planet second, and it's a really hard toss-up between Atlantis and Lilo and Stitch for the third spot.
So, let me ask you guys this too. I know we're kind of running out of time here, but with all of these, like the post-Renaissance period, where we were talking about how a lot of them aren't actual successes or anything, I know there's a few in here that aren't great, but do you think that a lot of the reason that we don't feel like they're as horrible as maybe some other people do is because of the nostalgia thing?
I don't think so, because I look at the ones that came out also like right around the same time, and I think they're horrible. So I don't think that's
Well,
like.
But I mean, like Atlantis and Treasure Planet. Well, I mean, you obviously just watched Treasure Planet, but even like, I don't know, some of the ones that weren't critical successes and stuff like that. Do you think that the reason that we really enjoy them as much as we do isn't because they're objectively incredible movies, or just I don't know? Like, what do you
I
think
don't think
that has
it's
any tie?
nostalgia for me because a lot of these movies, like with the exception of Lilo and Stitch, a lot of these movies I have seen, like I saw it like pretty well after it came out, or if I saw like most of these I saw like when it came out, but I kind of forgot about them, and like they weren't movies that I like went back and watched over and over and over again, which is a theme of mine. Is when I really like a movie, I will watch it like every day until I get sick of it. So I didn't do that with any of these films, but then when I went back and watched them like years later after they came out, I really enjoyed them. So that makes me kind of think that it's not nostalgia. But
I was just curious because I know that, like we had said before, like last week's episode, a lot of the love for Disney is nostalgia, and I know that obviously the Renaissance gets more love as being like objectively better movies. But I was just curious about that. If you guys really feel like these are just as good or what? Because
I definitely wouldn't say just as good.
I think there are some that are on par with some of the Renaissance movies, though. Even, like, the underrated ones. I would say Atlantis, Treasure Planet, they're all pretty good, too. Like, in terms of...
I don't know if I would put them on the same level.
Yeah, they...
And maybe that's the nostalgia.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I just wanted to see what you guys would say. But any questions, anything you guys want to talk about before we tie this up? I mean, we're already over, so go ahead, throw anything out there.
Yeah, right? I was just going to point out and ask you guys, like, I have a theory, and it's completely unfounded because I just thought of it, but I have a theory that maybe the kids that grew up in this era, like we did with the Renaissance, think these films are incredible. Wouldn't that be interesting to find out?
That would be, because I don't know. I feel like, you know, I was born in 92, so I kind of came in somewhat around the middle of the Renaissance. So, I mean, I was still fairly young when the first couple in the post-Renaissance era started coming out. But I don't feel the attachment to any of those like I feel to the Renaissance ones.
So here's my reason for debunking your theory.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, like Brian said, I'm 93. So
Wow, you look really young for your age.
Do I? Thanks.
90, because you said I'm 93.
Oh, wow, that was right over my head. That was bad.
So you were born in 93.
I'm born in 93. But kind of the same thing, like, a lot of the movies that I have nostalgia for are not from when I was born, but I think that the reason that Disney can do something like that is because of the Disney Vault. So obviously, like we talked about before, Disney has the Vault where every so many years you actually get a release of the movie, and it's kind of like a window of when can I get this back. It's almost like they're releasing a new movie. So a lot of the movies that I specifically have nostalgia for are like, Jungle Book, Oliver and Company. I think about those a lot, like when I think about movies I watched as a kid. And then a lot of the Renaissance movies, I mean, yeah, I watched Aladdin and, The Lion King and all them. Like, we grew up with them. But even stuff like that, I think more of the better movies are kind of Disney's older movies. And I think, like I said, because the Disney Vault releases them out, it's almost like you're seeing them again with fresh eyes or as a new movie.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think, so I was born in 1990, so I was born literally like the year after the Renaissance started. And I feel like I don't think that 2 and 3 years is a whole ton of a difference between me and you guys. But at the same time, it's like I think you probably remember more stuff when you're 6 rather than when you're, 3 or 4. So maybe, like, I don't know, maybe that would be a reason that I would kind of be more so biased towards these. Like, obviously you guys grew up with them too, but I don't know, some stuff that I feel like a lot of the stuff I grew up with, I've tried to go back and watch, and I'm like, oh my god, this is so bad. Or like music that I really loved when I was like, I don't know, 13 or 14. I'm like, oh wow, I haven't heard this song in a while, and then I listen to it, I'm like, well, this song is garbage. But I don't feel like that about these movies, So I feel like I like to think that I'm maybe, even though I'm biased, that I still am rational.
Well, that's the thing. Like other non-Disney movies that I've gone back and watched, yeah, it's the same thing. It's like, this is not like I remembered it was.
Yeah.
Well, and let me ask you this other question. I don't know if you guys have like any siblings or relatives that grew up like younger than you, because like my family's pretty close on my mom's side, and I have like younger cousins that are like years apart from me, and some that grew up in the era where like this would be their Disney Renaissance for us, like that period of movies would be for them, and I honestly don't think they even have the same connection to Disney that we do. Like, my aunt has 2 kids that would probably, well, 3 technically, but one of them kind of inherited the Disney gene through her. But the other 2, like, they could care less about Disney movies. Even when they were younger, they didn't really care about those. It was more about like the Cartoon Network and stuff like that. Things that I guess didn't really have the same. I mean, like, I remember Cartoon Network, but it wasn't like a big movie. Like, I wanted to sit down and watch a Disney movie or something like that. Like, that wasn't, their thing. And I don't know if that's I don't know if that's a product of the time or what, but interesting observation nonetheless.
Yeah, definitely. I agree, and I think that is probably true for a lot of younger kids, that was kind of like you said, that was their Renaissance, like the Renaissance was for us, because that's what they grew up, like that's what was coming out when they grew up. But I think that I still stand by my theory, and I think that there are probably kids out there that are sadly misguided in thinking that this is like the best era of Disney animation because this is what they associate with their childhood. Because, I mean, if you think about it, like, this is a whole another episode that we could do, but Disney Channel original movies, like, I've gone back and I've watched several of them, and I think that a lot of them still stand the test of time, but these ones that they're coming out with these days, they're super successful, and kids love them and eat them up, and, like, I can't even convince myself to watch them because it's so stupid. Like, I can't remember the name of it, but one of the most recent ones I was just I read about it, and basically the concept is like zombies and humans like living together, and they're like in high school.
Exactly what
they're
you're
like in
talking
high
about.
school together because they like scientists developed this, I don't know, nutrient source that makes the zombies like cool and not want to eat humans, and someone like takes it away and they all start going crazy, and I'm like, this sounds really dumb.
That does sound really dumb. This is the first I've ever heard of that.
Oh my god, go look it up. Like, and like kids are growing up with this thinking that this is good because this is what they're growing up with.
There's a really interesting YouTube video that I saw when we were researching all of this, and it was about what killed the Disney Channel, and I think
because it is dead.
Well, even beyond that, I mean, I don't know if you guys have watched the newest DuckTales, but I really enjoy that. But I still consider that like.
Well,
DuckTales
that's based on.
Right, it might be the nostalgia side of it, but like, there's a really interesting video I'll send you guys about like with that if I can remember to look for it, and it talks about how like there's a lot, and this may just be because, you know, obviously now it's like we're thinking about it more, but there's a lot of thought behind a lot of the stuff that we grew up with versus the stuff now where it's like, oh, this is silly slapstick humor, and that's what's the thing now.
I just looked it up, and the movie's literally called Zombies.
Wow, how creative.
And it's a musical. I didn't realize that part. Like, green tinted makeup. It's like not even like their skin isn't painted. It's just like, if I don't know how familiar you guys are with Photoshop, but it's like they took the sponge tool all over them and just made them look a little bit sickly, like they're jaundiced. Anyway, I kind of want to watch it for the same reason I want to watch Home on the Range, or want to finish Home on the Range.
Then that's going to do it for us this week. Thanks for joining us again on another episode of the Station 71 podcast. If you like what you heard, be sure to subscribe to us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts from. If you want to get in touch with us, you can find us on social media at Station71Pod on Twitter, Facebook.com/Station71Pod, Instagram at Station71Podcast, and you can send us a listener email to Station71Podcast@gmail.com. You can also call our brand new Google Voice number at 561-899-6441. We hope you enjoyed your ride, and we'll see you real soon.
Please stand clear of the doors. Por favor, manténganse alejado de las puertas.